listening to A Scary State, hopefully. And this week is our first October spooky special.
Oh, yes.
And we are talking about water and the spooky things that happen in water. So, Lauren.
Yes, Kenzie.
Let's get scary.
This is going to be a long episode,
but
just telling people now.
I feel like because we missed last week.
We did. So this is kind of making up for it. And I went a little overboard on the notes for this because it's so fascinating to me. And so if you have a long drive, this is just perfect.
Yeah. And think of it as like us making up time for missing last week too.
So you're welcome.
So everyone is fine.
Yes.
Everyone is okay.
Yes.
We just had some stuff going on that we needed to take care of.
So we're sad that we missed it. But like Mackenzie said in her post, family is important. So we had to take care of that first.
Always put yourself first in the well-being of you and your loved ones.
Yes.
No matter what your work tries to tell you. Not that my work did. My work was very supportive.
But just other works in general.
Yeah. And, you know, it was kind of ironic because while we were both gone, you were at water, as in the beach, and I was at water, as in a hurricane.
Well, I got to experience a tropical storm, an unnamed tropical storm. So we were in Carolina Beach. And I was sending Mackenzie videos of like the flooding that was going on.
Thankfully, it was just one day.
Yeah, I looked it up and it was, the mayor said that it was one of those, quote, once in a 1,000 year kind of storm.
That's
like
what they've
every
been saying
1,000 year
about the
storm.
last 5 storms that have happened in the last month.
Is that telling us anything about the environment? But yeah, it was wild. Things flooded. We couldn't go into the water because the water, one, was very scary. And I'm a good enough swimmer to not drown, but I am not a good enough swimmer to survive those waves. So we didn't go in the water. And then when we were going to go in the water, they said they were pumping the water that had flooded the island back into the ocean. And you're not supposed to swim for 48 hours after that.
And we wonder why our oceans is so polluted.
Right. And then, fun fact too, so we went to Ocean City beforehand. So we were there until Sunday. We left on Sunday morning. On Sunday afternoon, medical debris and medical waste started washing up on the beach, so they closed the beaches in Ocean City because of medical waste.
And I said, that's very on brand for Ocean City.
It was just all around a wild time.
Yeah, we joke in the past about the world being on fire, but it's legit really hot.
Yeah.
Like, it's not good how long it is hot for.
And just the severity of storms.
Correct. That is also going to continue to happen if it continues to stay so fucking hot.
Like, how is this one pronounced? Helene? Helene. If anyone was in the wake of that, hopefully you're okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully your families are okay.
Shout out to our Appalachian people.
Yeah.
We hope you're okay. And that you've gotten the things I saw this crazy video. I'm assuming it was someone, I don't know what state he was in, but the only way he could get attention from, like, I don't know if it was a helicopter, small plane, whatever, was like flashing a mirror.
Oh, that's smart.
Because he had no way to get help.
Anything, yeah.
No internet, no electricity, any of that stuff. And so that's how he got their attention. And it still took them hours to figure out how to land because he's in the freaking mountains.
Right.
And he needed like insulin, food, medical stuff. And I'm just like, the people in the mountains experiencing a hurricane like that is the equivalent of when Texas had snow.
Right. Because it's not something they ever experience.
You're in the mountains.
Mm-hmm.
You expect a blizzard.
Yep.
Maybe a mudslide or two.
Right.
But not people in Ohio were experiencing it.
Yeah.
And we were lucky because Mom was further south.
Mm-hmm.
And so it didn't hit us directly on.
Well, when I wanted to see how long your drive was going to take you, so I just put like Venice or whatever. And it was like, this area is in an evacuation zone. Are you sure you want to continue with this drive? And I was like, oh God, Mackenzie.
I know. Everyone was really worried about me. And I talked to
my mom was so worried about you.
She texted me. She was so sweet. I talked to my grandma last night and she was like, yeah, your dad was really worried. And I was like, a lot of people were. And if it makes you feel better, Grandma, I too was worried. I didn't like my plan either. I did not consider this a good idea.
It was the only one I had. So for people who don't know, Mackenzie had to go down to Florida to be with her mom.
Yeah.
Everything's fine, like we said.
And I didn't want to get caught in the hurricane.
Right.
So I went.
She was going to fly, but the flights were canceled because of said hurricane.
Yes. So I drove and kind of just barely skirted around Tampa.
Oh my God.
So when I got there, it was starting to pick up wind.
Mm-hmm.
I had to go back out to my car to get my snacks. And I almost got knocked over.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I looked a lot out the window, which is not very me thing to do during like a storm like that. And I was like, wow, I've never seen. Now, it wasn't directly a Category 3 hurricane, but like the outskirts of one.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, this is quay.
Well, for when we were at the beach, we started with the windows open. And
Yeah.
then they were like, oh, there's like really bad thunderstorms. So we're like, okay, like we'll back away from the windows. And it was like, oh, tornado warning. We're like, we're going to close the blinds.
Okay. So when I was with my mom, there was a tornado warning. And I was like, do we need to go? Do we need to go somewhere? We're on the 5th floor. It says to get to a basement. We are at the very top.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need? And she's like, no, we're fine. Like, didn't even freaking blink.
She lives in Florida.
And I'm like, okay. So
you
then
get desensitized to things.
Right. So we're talking about it. I said, so if I got a tornado warning, would you want me to seek shelter? And she's like, yes, of course. So what the fuck are we doing? She's like, we're so safe. We're fine. Okay.
You guys probably were really safe.
Yeah. That building was secure.
Yeah. We were like, where could we go if there's a tornado?
Well, and my mom was saying too that her house and like her neighborhood is built with, like the houses are built pretty much with cement.
Oh, yeah.
And
because they know that it's Florida weather.
Right. And, but I was also saying to her, I was like, I feel like that's a new norm now,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know how long that's been going on because I feel like there's still a lot of people who that's not what their house is made of.
Right.
So our thoughts and prayers and good wishes go to all those who are affected. And, we hope you're okay.
Mom had a coworker who their parents were like right in the path of that.
Mhm.
And so he was calling and could not get in touch with them.
That's terrifying.
Like at all. So he drove down there and thank God they were fine.
Yeah.
It didn't hit them as bad as like the news said the part where they was hit, which is good.
Yeah.
And the reason they hadn't been able to get in touch was because the power lines were down, electricity was out and
Yeah, it's
everything,
still
but
out.
they were okay.
It's been a week. It's still out.
I know.
It's crazy. And it was almost kind of like this when, what was it, Ian?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Where it was like, because my mom was in the direct path of that. And the biggest issue was it made a last minute skirt and went that way. So people were kind of unprepared because they didn't think it was going to hit them directly on. And my mom was out of electricity for at least 36 to 48 hours.
Because we lost electricity back during a snowstorm for like 24 hours, and that sucked. And that was only 24 hours.
Yeah. Here, you have all these people who are in an area that is not prepared for that kind of thing.
I know.
And so not only is it going to take a while because they kind of have to figure out as they go.
It would be like us getting a hurricane here.
Right.
We're not prepared for something. Like we've had hurricanes, but like
we've
never had
strong storms.
Right. But we've never had something like that.
Not to that level. Definitely not. Like we don't know what we do in the rain. So can only imagine if that shit picks up.
Yeah.
So, but yeah. But other than your tropical storm, did you have a good time at the beach?
Oh, such a good time.
Good.
It was wild though, like with the tropical storm, we went into a fudge place and we were like talking to them and they're like, oh yeah, you guys are our first customer since we reopened after the storm. And we were like, oh yeah, that was wild. And they're like, oh yeah, we had 2 feet of water in here.
Yeah.
And we are like, oh my God.
Well, when you sent me that one video and the water was like at least up to that first step or something like that.
Yeah, it was up to Jared's calves.
Yeah.
And that was at 11 a.m. It kept going all night long. But other than that, it was great. Didn't go in the water at all again for the reasons. But it was good. I read a lot, got tan, ate good food. It was great.
See, I think, both of our experiences with water these last couple of weeks is very on brand.
Oh.
If you will, with our water episode.
Well, then do you want to jump into the facts?
I would love to.
And like I said, I went a little crazy on these because I got really excited. And I also didn't proofread them.
I don't proofread them either.
Okay, good. So
that's the fun part about these facts.
My story today more relates to the water facts.
So it's like background knowledge.
Yes, because I was like, if I add this into my notes, this is just going to be, I'm going to be talking for like 3 hours.
Yeah. That's
a lie, but kind of. So I just put them, I was like, perfect episode facts.
Yeah, I'm down.
So this is a intro into scuba diving and how
all the bad things that can happen
and
to
how
you.
dangerous it can be if you aren't prepared.
So don't do it.
Yeah. I was like telling mom about this topic, and just so many times throughout the conversation, I said, I would never. There's no way I would ever do this. Never will I scuba dive, ever. I got kind of freaked out snorkeling. And that's, I could just pop my head up.
Yeah.
Never will I do this.
This is, again, definitely one of those things. Like, I would love to not be fearful of this, but we are. So.
And this episode will not make you any less fearful of it.
No.
So.
We take spooky very seriously.
Yes, we do.
And we're doing a little twist today. I am reading the state facts.
Oh.
So sorry to future Lauren, all the editing you're going to have to do for my reading skills.
I know. I'm kidding.
Fuck you.
I love you.
So we start off our facts with nitrogen narcosis.
Mm-hmm.
Nitrogen narcosis goes by a few names. There is depth intoxication, rapture of the deep, and the martini effect. Those all have very different vibes.
I know.
This effect is an altered consciousness that occurs while diving at depth due to the anesthetic effect of certain gases at high partial pressure. The effects of nitrogen narcosis can be felt during shallow dives, but usually don't become noticeable until at least 98 feet or 30 meters. Usually, not always. And it is reversible, and the effects start to go away when the diver ascends to a shallower depth with no long-term effects. Diving to 98 feet is about the limit for recreational diving. Lower than that, due to the higher risk of nitrogen narcosis and oxygen toxicity, a different mixture of gas is needed for the dive, such as trimix or
I think it's trimix or heliomix. Heliox.
Trimix or heliox.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when you read it, it'll tell you why it's trimix.
There's 3, I bet.
Yep.
Trimix is a mixture of oxygen, helium, and nitrogen.
Mm-hmm.
Heliox is helium and oxygen.
So
makes
pretty
sense.
self-explanatory in
Pretty
their
much.
names.
These mixtures prevent or at least greatly reduce narcosis. Because it has perception-altering effects, the onset of narcosis isn't easy to recognize. At its most benign, narcosis results in relief of anxiety. Sign me up. Making the diver feel tranquil.
Tranquil.
I knew right away, too.
I know. You're like,
Making the diver feel tranquil and a master of the environment. This sounds like a great time. I don't understand why this
You're
is
just
bad.
like on top of it. You like got this. That's how you
Hell
feel.
Yeah. I would love that feeling.
Well, let's not have nitrogen narcosis to feel it.
I guess. This is sort of mirroring the feelings of alcohol and benzodiazepine drugs.
So the calm downers, things like that.
Yeah. Benzos.
Yeah.
On the more extreme side, narcosis can cause impairment of judgment, multitasking. That's weird. So you are all of a sudden able to multitask.
No, it can cause impairment of judgment, multitasking and coordination.
Oh.
Oh my God. Just read them. Stop thinking that I said it wrong.
No, I'm not thinking you said it wrong. I thought it was impaired judgment, but then you could also start multitasking. I was like, that's
like,
really
okay,
weird.
why is this a bad thing?
Yeah. I was like, I don't know. You feel on top of the world. All of a sudden you can multitask. This
What is wrong with this?
correct. Okay, that makes more sense. So you have impairment of judgment, multitasking, and coordination, and the loss of decision-making ability and focus. Every day. It can also include vertigo and visual and auditory disturbances. This may also cause exhilaration, giddiness, extreme anxiety, depression, and paranoia. The diver may also feel overconfident, disregarding normal safe diving practices. Wow, this really is like alcohol.
I know.
Reaction and mental activity are slow. There is increased errors in cognitive functions. It also reduces the body's perception of cold and shivering, which affects the production of body heat, which allows for the core temperature to drop in cold water, which also reduces awareness of this problem.
So you get really cold and you don't realize you're getting cold, and then your body won't shiver to keep you warm
Like like hypothermia?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So that's why it has its nickname, the Martini Law. As the idea is that you get the feeling of 1 martini for every 33 feet or 10 meters below 66 feet or 20 meters of depth. So you have to go.
Read the next line.
Okay.
That's where I explain it.
I was like, okay, I definitely need this one explained.
That's why I wrote it out.
So you hit 66 feet, you're fine. At 99, it feels like you've had 1 martini. At 132, it feels like you've had 2 martinis, and so on.
Which is why the Martini Law. So when you're saying like, oh, it just sounds like alcohol, it's like,
Yeah. These signs and symptoms of narcosis were put together by John Littman and Simon Mitchell in their research Deeper into Diving. At 33 feet or 10 meters, there are either unnoticeable minor symptoms or no symptoms at all. 33 to 100 feet or 10 to 30 meters, there is mild impairment in the performance of unpracticed tasks, mildly impaired reasoning, and a mild euphoria is possible. 100 to 165 feet or 30 to 50 meters, there is a delayed response to stimuli. Your reasoning and memory are affected more here than motor coordination. There are also calculation errors, idea fixation, overconfidence, laughter, and anxiety are also common. Again, same.
Which is like kind of scary to think about laughter when you're underwater with a tube in your mouth.
Well, I guess that's why this is probably deadly.
It can be.
Yeah.
Yep.
165 to 230 feet or 50 to 70 meters, you experience sleepiness, impaired judgment, confusion, dizziness, and hallucinations. Shit would be crazy to see
I know.
Because you're like...
You already don't know what's underwater.
Correct.
Mhm.
Yes, exactly. There is now a severe delay in responses. There may be some uncontrollable laughter or even hysteria.
Which is so terrifying
I know.
underwater.
Some experience terror.
Like full on terror.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
They probably start freaking out at this point,
Mm-hmm.
which I know won't help.
No, God, no.
230 to 300 feet or 70 to 90 meters, you have poor concentration and mental confusion. Same. Sorry. There's a state of being in extreme shock and a decrease in dexterity and judgment. Dexterity is like how you
can use your hands. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. There's also memory loss and increased
Excitability.
Thank you. I always have increased excitability. 300 plus feet or 90 plus meters. Now the diver could be experiencing intense hallucinations, increased intensity of hearing and vision. Not 100% sure what that
I
means.
didn't know what that means. It was like increased intensity of vision and hearing. So like, does it just mean like maybe you can hear things even better, like eagle eye and sonar?
Maybe it's like piercing though.
Maybe.
And it's like,
Because I read that and I was like, not sure what it means, but let me include it.
yeah, and auditory hallucinations. They may experience a sense of impending blackout or feeling like they are levitating. You're in the water.
Yeah, but I feel like maybe instead of knowing you're in the water and you're like in the water, you feel like you're levitating.
Oh.
Like maybe it's like a different kind of feeling.
Yeah. Dizziness, euphoria, manic or depressive states, sense of time may seem all messed up, and the facial appearance may change. Unconsciousness and then death are also possible.
Mm-hmm.
So that is nitrogen narcosis.
Which is just so freaky.
Next up on our
Scary
of
list.
great things that can happen while you're diving. Oxygen toxicity. Oxygen toxicity. Oh, that's going to be tricky.
You can also call it OT if you want.
Oh, we sure are. 'Cause I can't say all those X's and Y's. Oxygen toxicity is a condition resulting from the harmful effects of breathing molecular oxygen, O2, at increased partial pressures. Severe cases can result in cell damage and death, with effects most often seen in the central nervous system, lungs, and eyes. Oxygen, which makes sense because that's where all the oxygen goes.
Exactly.
Oxygen toxicity can affect the central nervous system, pulmonary, lungs, and ocular, eyes mainly. Didn't we just say that?
It can affect your nervous system, your lungs, and your eyes. So that's the central nervous system, the pulmonary system, and the ocular system.
Yeah, but you said that right before with the effects.
Yeah, I know,
most
but
seen in
this
central-
is the cooler words for it all.
more official.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
Because then if we go into the next part, you see where I say some of those so people knew.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Oxygen toxicity in the central nervous system manifests as symptoms such as visual changes, usually tunnel vision, ringing in the ears, nausea, twitching, irritability, anxiety, confusion, and dizziness. These symptoms may be followed by a tonic-clonic seizure,
A tonic-clonic, yeah.
which consists of two phases. Quote, intense muscular contraction occurs for several seconds. That's the tonic phase, followed by rapid spasms of alternate muscle relaxation and contraction producing convulsive jerking, which is the clonic phase.
Mm-hmm.
The seizure will end with a period of unconsciousness.
So if this
Still.
happens in the normal world, it's fine.
Mm.
But if this happens underwater,
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
mm-hmm.
Oof. In the lungs, it starts with a tickle that progresses to frequent coughing, hard underwater, which you cannot
Exactly.
fucking do, or shortness of breath, which, again, you're underwater.
Exactly. But it could be like with the shortness of breath, then you're trying to breathe in more oxygen, which
Yeah.
is just
Yeah.
adding to the problem.
Underwater oxygen toxicity can be catastrophic, as having a seizure results in a high risk of death by drowning. And what's really scary about this is that the seizure could occur suddenly and with no warning symptoms. The convulsions and unconsciousness can lead to the regulator falling out of the diver's mouth and them drowning. Diving below 184 feet or 55 meters on air
on air. Just air, not having like one of those trimixes or the helium mix. So just straight up air.
Oh, okay. On air can expose a diver to increased dangers of oxygen toxicity.
Yeah, so at certain depths, that's why we talked about the trimix and the heliox or
so
whatever.
It like helps with...
You have to have different mixes the deeper down you go. Because of the pressure of being underwater, it does stuff to like the bubbles and the cells and the oxygen and all of that you're taking in.
I mean, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
But like,
so you have to have certain mixes of different gases so that all of the bubbles and the helium and the stuff
regulate as you go down. Interesting. Very interesting. Now we have the bends, which I have heard of.
Yes. This one is one that people typically know of.
Yes. Decompression sickness is also known as the bends. While scuba diving, your body absorbs nitrogen from the air you are breathing. When the water pressure increases, so you're going deeper, the more nitrogen you take in. In order to safely get rid of the nitrogen, you ascend back to the surface slowly, which is exactly how to do it. But issues arise when you ascend too quickly. In this case, the nitrogen forms harmful bubbles in the bloodstream or tissues. Blogpatty.com describes it as
like this is how they describe it.
Okay.
And I thought that it was better than anything I could paraphrase, so I just took it right there.
Quote, if you're still wondering what are the bends in scuba diving, then picture your favorite soda. Carbon dioxide is dissolved in the liquid, but when you open the lid, the rapid change in pressure leads to bubbles forming. When similar pressure changes happen to nitrogen that's dissolved in your body, it also forms bubbles, and that is what causes the bends when scuba diving. So you're like popping like a bottle.
So like just there's like a lot of bubbles and they don't really have anywhere to go. So they're painfully and harmfully in you.
The deeper you dive, the more likely you are to get the bends if you ascend too quickly. The biggest pressure difference is from 33 feet or 10 meters to the surface, so it is important to ascend slowly at the end of your dive. Scuba divers will slowly ascend and make a 3-minute safety stop at 16 feet or 5 meters. This allows the body enough time to get rid of excess nitrogen. Signs and symptoms of the bends can actually occur anywhere from 15 minutes to 12 hours after a dive. That's crazy.
I know, you can think you're totally safe.
Yeah. The onset can even take up to 36 hours. So the signs and symptoms are numbness, tingling, itchiness, joint and limb pain and weakness, headache, dizziness or vertigo, nausea or vomiting, fatigue, confusion, difficulty urinating, visual or hearing problems, impaired balance or coordination, difficulty breathing or chest pain, paralysis, and loss of consciousness.
Oh,
I know. If a diver does experience the bends, they can fully recover with proper treatment. Breathing 100% oxygen can help to reduce the symptoms and assist with nitrogen elimination, but the symptoms can come back. So always talk to a doctor if you suspect that you have the bends. We are not medical professionals.
No.
We are not giving medical advice.
Not at all. Talk to your doctor.
Yes. The only real treatment, though, is recompression. This puts your body back under pressures, like if you're on a dive, which shrinks the bubbles and allows for a safe release of the nitrogen. This is done in a hyperbaric chamber.
So yeah, you go into this chamber, and instead of like going back underwater and slowly rising, because there's so many things that could go wrong with that, you go into a chamber and
it gives like the same...
they do the pressure for you, but it's very controlled so that you're able to get back to where you need to do. So people who will do like deep sea things in like submarines and stuff, or like going into bells and working on stuff down at the bottom of the ocean, they'll get into these chambers when they're not working so that they don't have to go through the stops.
Yeah.
They can just be in this chamber.
Okay. So it like simulates the
going up and taking your safety stops.
Yeah. Okay. There are things to do to prevent the bends. Ascend slowly and complete all of your safety stops. Wait 12 to 24 hours before flying. This is wild. It's because the pressure drop during a flight can be like rapid ascent while diving.
Isn't that so weird?
I saw a episode of House where that happened.
Yeah. I had a friend who wanted to go scuba diving on a vacation, and they had already been certified and everything, and they were going to go a little bit deeper, but they were going to be flying the next day. So the dive instructor was like, no,
yeah,
like you can't do that.
I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Or diving with enriched air nitrox, which has a lower percentage of nitrogen, so less is being absorbed into your body. The average occurrence of the bends is about 3 cases per 10,000 dives, which is not bad.
No, it's not, but it's still something that's very dangerous.
So now we got some stories about this happening to people.
I told you I went way deep into this.
If you weren't already freaked out enough, here are people's actual experiences.
Yeah.
So Don Shirley and Dave Shaw went on a dive in Bushman's Cave in South Africa to recover the body of diver Dion Dreyer. They dove down to almost 1,000 feet. More people have walked on the moon than ascended to such depths.
Isn't that wild?
Well, yes and no, because I also think about the fact of like, we know more about space than we do about oceans.
I know, which I was talking to my coworker about this. Okay, here's my thought. Space is infinite. There is no end to space.
Correct.
Okay. the ocean that has an end.
Yeah.
That we know of.
Yeah.
Of. So how is it possible that we know more about something that doesn't have an end than something that does have an end?
Because we haven't made the technology yet to be able to get down there.
Yeah, but still, I feel like there's so much of space. Like, we're never gonna get to an end. So even if we've explored, like, a little bit of it, it's never gonna be at least 1% because it's so much.
We had the space race, not the ocean race.
I know, but still, it's just...
That's why we know so much more. Because for, like, 2 decades, it was our hyperfixation.
Yeah, but if you think about the percentage of what we know... We maybe know 1% of the ocean, but because space is so infinite and doesn't have an end, there's not even a 1% that we can know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, a lot of it with space is also theories too.
Right.
So I think it's just because we are just now really starting to make the technology
it's just
to do that.
Fascinating.
And I feel like it's just so different too from space.
Yeah.
So, and it's
so wild.
It's so big.
I know.
So big. Anywhoozers. Video footage of the dive showed that Shaw lost his light and became entangled in ropes they were using to hoist up Dreyer's body. At the same time, an equipment failure caused Shirley to accidentally start receiving too much oxygen. He developed a helium bubble that caused him to lose consciousness and let go of the guideline that told him how to get back out of the cave. He was spinning, disoriented, vomiting, and frantically searching for a way out, not knowing which way was up and which was down. Eventually, he did right himself, but had to wait in the water for another 10 hours to allow the nitrogen to escape. Otherwise, he could get the bends. Unfortunately, Shaw's body was later discovered floating on the surface attached to Dreyer's. That's sad.
So that's what the whole oxygen toxicity and then having to do all of your safety stops as you're going up for all the nitrogen to get out of your body.
Yeah, so you don't, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
The Blue Hole is a very popular diving spot. It is located on the east coast of Egypt's Sinai Peninsula. The Blue Hole is coral-lined and 394 feet deep. In April 2000, Yuri Lipsky, a Russian diver, geared up to dive here. Lipsky went diving and was recording his whole dive. The video shows that at around the 300-foot mark, or 91 meters, Lipsky started to panic and thrash around. He was suffering from nitrogen narcosis. In the end, he removed his breathing apparatus and the recording stops. His body, along with that video, were later found.
So it's with the nitrogen narcosis where you just kind of lose sense of who you are. That's why with this one, it's very common that people remove their breathing apparatus because that's just...
Did you get these stories from Mr. Ballin?
No, actually.
Okay, because he covers a lot of diving stories.
I know he does. He covers a lot. And then another... So I did watch one of his to get some more facts. Mm-hmm. And then also Scary Interesting on YouTube also covers a lot, which is where my fascination for all of this grew because he talks about so much of this stuff. And I just think it's so interesting. So I used them for a lot of these stories. Yeah. And then these are, so many links are in our notes, like our works cited page, because I couldn't stop.
I mean, it's fine with me.
But yeah,
the more you know,
it's so scary. And I just think it's so interesting to talk about because I think why I like it so much is because I know I would never do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I can scare myself so bad by reading about it because I know I'm never going to do it.
Sure.
And so I just love it. Well, it's just so fascinating.
You know, I don't know if we are just not technologically advanced yet or if there's no amount of technology that can keep us safe from and do these things.
If I knew that I could 100% would be safe, absolutely I would do this.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that I don't think I would be 100% safe and I'm not about to risk any of this.
Yeah. No, agreed.
Mm-hmm.
And it's I feel like that's also why we don't know a lot about the ocean is because we don't have that technology yet to be able to go into it safely.
I want it so
badly.
Depths. I want people to go to the depths. Not me. But I want other people to do it.
It's like the haunted stuff. You guys can keep going and letting us know what happens. I don't need to go.
I'd be more, okay, would you rather go to the Conjuring house? Okay, super haunted house, the Conjuring movies. Or go cave diving?
I've already been in a cave, so
no,
I'm
but
going to choose
cave diving.
I'm going to choose cave.
With, scubaing.
Scubaing?
Yeah, scubaing.
Well, I would just tell myself you were already in a cave once and you survived. You can do it again, not just being in water.
That thought might change at the end of my stories.
I'm not saying I'd want to do it, but I can be much more logical about a scientific thing where it has facts along with it that's don't do this, don't do that, and you'll be fine. The Conjuring is a thing that and an entity.
There's no rules.
There's no rules. There's no right answers. There's no wrong answers either. And so you just don't know. And I don't like not knowing. I know that I could die in this situation if I'm stupid. I don't know what's going to happen because everything is out of my control and I can't do stuff like that. That's why I hate flying, because it's out of my control.
Yes.
And we know about my control issues.
Yeah, we do.
So,
well, we'll revisit this question at the end of my section.
Probably still be the same.
Well, we'll see.
I also wouldn't go that, like, I would have, like, I'd be one of those sticklers where I'd be like, I'm at 100 feet. I'm not going anywhere else.
33 feet exactly. I'm not going any further.
Yep. Start the timer. We got to wait here for 20 minutes.
Up. We're 2 seconds early. We're not moving yet.
We're not moving.
Now we can go.
We have to stay here more time. That would be me.
That would be you. That would be 100% me too.
Yeah.
I am the direction follower, the rule follower. Mm-hmm.
Unless there's a sense of confidence that I know what I'm doing.
Well, yeah.
I will follow the rules explicitly.
Yeah.
And even then, sometimes if I think it's stupid, I won't do it.
That too.
Yeah. But anyway, water. What spooky warm... No, that's not what I was going to say. Okay, you're going to have to take that out. What spooky watered down tea are you pouring, Lauren?
Oh, okay.
Got it?
I get it. That was really good.
Thank you.
Okay. Today I'm going to talk about Jacob's Well and all the things that have happened in there.
Yeah.
So Jacob's
Is this like a well or?
Well, I'll explain. I promise you.
Okay.
So Jacob's Well, located in Wimberley, Texas, is a clear water spring that flows from the bed of Cypress Creek. It is located on the property of Jacob's Well Natural Area and is managed by the Hays County Parks Department. Back in the 1850s, a new settler stumbled upon the cave or the spring as he wanted a spot where he could construct a water-powered mill.
Was his name Jacob?
No.
Oh.
So the Jacob part, I think they said comes from the biblical Jacob thing.
There's a biblical Jacob?
Yes.
Oh.
I don't know what he did, but that's my thing. So at the time, in the 1850s, the spring was like a bubbling cauldron. It was a karst spring, which is a spring that is part of a Karst hydraulic system.
I don't know what that means.
Mainly, it would produce the water needed for the mill, so it just produces a lot of water, so 640 liters per second.
So it like has a natural...
Where it comes from the creek to the well.
System or whatever.
Pretty much, yeah. So the well is unique as it also had an upside-down waterfall on the surface. So nothing could go into the well, as the force of the water would push whatever it was back to the surface.
Okay.
So people who talked about it said like they would they would jump into the water and it would push them back up to the top.
Okay, there's going to have to be pictures. There's no way I'm going to understand this just from verbal words.
Well, there's no pictures anymore. Like, it doesn't do that anymore. So the mill lasted a bit, but over time went out of use, was taken down and moved elsewhere, especially as the water in the well calmed down. So it no longer pushes things up. It's now just kind of a calm little area.
Why did it calm down?
I don't know.
You never have answers to my questions.
Because people don't ask those questions, so they don't have answers.
Who's not asking that question?
I don't know. There's probably some nature reason for it.
I can't believe you didn't ask that question.
I didn't care enough. I added that in last because I was like, maybe I should add more about why it's this. I didn't need to add more, but I did. So today, Jacob's Well is a 12-foot or 3.7 meter diameter mouth of a spring.
Say that number again.
12 foot
Uh-huh.
or 3.7 meter.
So 12 feet in diameter.
Yeah.
So, okay. Got it.
The well is a very popular place for locals and tourists to visit and swim in on those hot Texas days with the water remaining at a constant 68 degrees.
Nice.
It is also very popular, though, for daredevils who want to go scuba diving, consisting of cave divers and open water divers alike. Though now only professional and certified divers are allowed.
See, so I wouldn't even be allowed in your cave, so your story is not going to have any impact on my answer.
No, my answer is going to be you either have to go into the Conjuring house with no needed training beforehand, or go into Jacob's Well, but have to be a scuba diver, scuba certified.
So you mean have more knowledge of doing the scary thing, but know what I'm doing because I got a chance to practice versus just going in blind.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Jacob's Well is very dangerous. It is actually,
but I'd be certified.
It is actually one of the most intricate and dangerous cave systems in the world. Between 1964 and 1984, there have been 9 fatalities, 8 men and 1 woman, but over 12 overall. So just between those 20 years, there were 9, but outside of those 20 years, there have been over 12 people who have died in here.
Okay.
I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it is.
Depends on how many people go in.
A lot.
Well, then.
That doesn't really help the statistics then. Not a lot go in.
Carry on.
Jacob's Well's intricate cave system comprises of 4 chambers, with each chamber getting smaller, darker, and more narrow. With the chambers getting smaller, it's harder to investigate the chambers the further you go down.
Yeah.
So the whole thing, it is 140 feet deep, 42.6 meters with the cave system. So,
Question.
yes.
So obviously you're allowed to swim.
Mhm.
And anyone's allowed to swim.
Mhm.
Is the area you swim, is that the same? Like,
Oh, I'll explain.
Okay.
I'll explain all the chambers.
No, I just meant like, is that where the divers go in?
Oh, yeah. Everyone enters from that one spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering.
So it's 140 feet deep, with the cave system measuring about 5,000 feet. So it's 140 feet depth-wise, but with the cave and all of it
close to a mile.
intricateness, yeah, it's 4,000 feet or 1,524 meters.
Do you know how many feet are in a mile?
4 to
5.
or 5 to 80. Isn't it something about tomato?
5 tomatoes.
Yeah.
5 to 80.
Yeah.
Is that
That's
what you said?
I said. Yeah.
Yes. I'm not good with the order of numbers.
So you enter the well part of Jacob's Well. So it's essentially a pool where the tourists and locals swim. This is a place to jump into the water, and the shallow areas are where you can sit, enjoy the cool water.
Okay, cool.
In this pool, at the bottom of the well, so in the center of the well, there is a 10-foot wide shaft that leads you straight down.
And is the water clear enough that you can see, or does it just look
In
like...
this pool, yes.
But not from like above. You have to be in the pool to be able to see it. Or no?
I'll show you a picture.
Okay.
It's clear water.
Yeah.
So you can see, but as you go further down, you're going to not be able to see.
Right. I just didn't know. Like, I've seen those pictures of like people jumping into these watering holes, but you can't see down. You know it goes down, but you can't see it.
You can see. Like,
Yeah.
you wouldn't be afraid to jump into it.
Oh, I'd be afraid if I could
Well,
see it.
You would.
It's like, that to me is almost the same thing as being up high.
Okay. Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
So swimming down this shaft or tunnel will bring you into the first chamber.
Mhm.
So this chamber sits about 30 feet or 9 meters down and goes down to 55 feet. So 24 meters. So the whole first chamber is about 25 feet tall.
Okay.
This one still has sunlight, marine life, algae. So this is typically where beginner scuba divers hang out. It's a large open area and easy to get into and get out of.
Okay.
At the bottom of this chamber, so at 55 feet down, there's another shaft, smaller and more narrow than the first. So this tunnel makes up the second chamber. So this one goes from 55 feet to 80 feet, or 24 meters, and it's basically just a tube. There's still a little bit of light in this section, but obviously less than the first. This section typically attracts novice and intermediate scuba divers. This chamber is a bit tighter and more claustrophobic than the first, but it's far more dangerous.
Oh.
So this one is the most dangerous on the ascent, so going up, people making their way back out, because of something known as the false chimney. So this is an opening that
I feel
looks...
like I've heard that before.
You probably have.
Yeah.
So it's an opening that looks exactly like the main exit out of the second chamber and back into the first, but
it's
it isn't an
not.
exit. It's a dead end. And it loops around until you hit a wall, the dead end. At that wall, you have to turn around and go all the way back, hoping that you have enough air to do so.
Oh, I definitely feel like I've heard something about this before.
You might have.
Yeah.
So at the bottom of this chamber at 80 feet, there's yet another opening that would bring you into the third chamber.
Okay, so all these chambers are kind of like loosely connected. It's not like one.
They're all connected.
Right, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You go from the first, swim down to the second, swim down to the
Okay.
third, swim down to the fourth.
Okay.
So this opening is a very tight squeeze. So tight that with your oxygen tank on, you can barely squeeze your way into it. After you kind of shimmy and squeeze your way into this opening, you'll enter a very small room, which is known as the third chamber. So there's no light in this one. It's completely dark. The only light is whatever light source you brought in on your own.
So this is a small room now. So you go through the little tiny tunnel and now you're kind of in this
in a room.
space.
Mhm.
Okay.
This chamber also happens to have a lot of silt and loose gravel.
Mm.
So silt and loose gravel is dangerous in a cave. If
'Cause
your
you can't
fin
see.
so much as touches it, it goes all over the place and
Yeah.
essentially clouds up the space, making it pretty much impossible to see anything.
Yeah.
So divers will usually inflate water wings in this chamber
Okay.
to keep them up
Afloat.
so that they're not anywhere near the bottom. It keeps them up towards the top.
Yeah.
And it's a way for them to easily navigate the chamber successfully so
And
that they
how-
don't kick up the silt.
How deep is the room in the chamber?
This chamber is only 10 feet tall,
Okay.
so 3 meters. So it goes from the 80-foot mark to the 90-foot mark
Okay.
in the whole system of the chamber.
Yeah. So it'd be, if you're a 6-foot guy and you're standing upright.
Yeah.
You're going to, there's a good possibility you could touch the bottom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with your flippers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Definitely. But
Okay.
you're horizontal.
Right. Right.
This chamber is only really explored by expert divers. Beginners and even novices do not venture a chance in this cave, like in this cavern chamber. At the bottom,
It's all kind of the same
It's all the same thing. At the bottom of this chamber is a heavy metal grate that sits over a very small opening. This is the opening for chamber 4.
Well, it doesn't sound like it's open.
So chamber 4 is the final and most infamous chamber of Jacob's Well. No one is able to describe the inside of this chamber, though. First off, there's so much silt in here that you'll kick it up and it will blind you regardless, so you're going into this tunnel chamber blind.
Can you even fit?
Well, second off, anyone who has either attempted to go in or has successfully made it in has died. There are literally bodies of deceased divers in this chamber. This grate was put on by Don Dibble.
Nice.
Dibadome, owner of the Dibsdale Dibadome. So this was a result of over a dozen people losing their lives trying to get into the 4th chamber. So he owned a nearby...
Stubborn.
They were?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he owned a nearby dive shop and was usually the one to pull the remains of the dead divers out of the cave.
God, I don't blame him for that.
Quote, Jacob's Well definitely has a national reputation of being one of the most dangerous places to dive, he has said. So he installed the gate in an attempt to stop people from going too deep and to hopefully prevent more deaths. So he actually once almost lost his life in the well in 1979 during a rescue recovery, like a recovery dive. So it was in January of 1980 that Dibble attempted to seal off the 4th chamber. He built a grate of rebar and quickset cement at the entrance. 6 months later, Dibble returned to check on the gate only to find it destroyed with a note written on a plastic slate that said, "You can't keep us out."
You got a death wish, then so be it.
So let's say you're able to get past this grate and you want to venture into the 4th chamber. Well, the entrance is so small and so narrow that the only way to get in is you'd have to remove your air tanks from your back and push them in front of you at the opening, keeping the restraint in your mouth. So you'd have to literally wriggle your body into the chamber while pushing your tanks and keeping the airpiece in your mouth.
What's the purpose of this?
I don't know.
Like, what do you gain?
I don't know.
Pride?
That's what I don't understand.
You're not discovering anything.
Well, it's unknown what to do once you're inside because, like I said, no one who has made it has come out alive. So you are discovering something.
Mm-hmm.
And the dive down to this last chamber is a 5-hour dive.
Wow.
So it takes you 5 hours to get down and I think back up. I'm not sure if that's the same, but regardless.
Well, yeah, because you have to stop.
Yeah.
And
it's gonna take you 5 hours to do this whole dive.
That's crazy.
So now there's actually a limit at this place that you're only allowed to be there for 2 hours.
I mean, you gotta do what you gotta do.
So today the entrance of this chamber has a warning on it. So it's a sign with a Grim Reaper. The sign has been seen at the entrance of many underwater caves. So it's also at this one. So it says, quote, "Stop, prevent your death, go no further. Fact, more than 300 divers, including open water scuba instructors, have died in caves just like this one. Fact, you needed training to dive. You need cave training and cave equipment to cave dive. Fact, without cave training and cave equipment, divers can die here. Fact, it can happen to you. There's nothing in this cave worth dying for. Do not go beyond this point."
You would think that we definitely have the technology to send like a video camera in there.
Potentially.
So it's like, send that first.
Right.
And check it out and see what's going on.
But I don't think I don't think Jacob's Well is like that popular that I don't think a lot of money and resources would be allocated to getting a camera to go down there, you know?
No, that makes sense.
But unfortunately, not even the sign has stopped people from going in.
Of course not.
So that brings us...
Because they think that they are above it.
Yeah. That it won't happen to them.
Mm-hmm.
So that brings us to our first story. So on September 9th, 1979, a group of friends went to explore Jacob's Cave. Among that group were 2 young Texans, Kent Maupin, 20, and Mark Brazier, 21. Maupin was an experienced diver and had heard of the wonders of Jacob's Well. He was especially interested in the stories of the 4th chamber. He had heard some stories that the 4th chamber was empty and contained pretty much nothing, but he also heard stories that it was a diver's El Dorado and he wanted to experience it. So that's the draw that people have to that 4th chamber.
It's pride. I did it. I made it down and back. I survived.
Yep. Maupin worked as an assistant instructor and part-time employee at the Pasadena dive shop, and with working there, he had heard the dangers of the well, particularly that 4 divers over the past just few years had lost their lives in the well in the exact section he wanted to explore. Maupin had a friend named Mark...
I can see the draw.
Right. He had a friend named Mark Brazier. Brazier was a 21-year-old student from San Jacinto College who was part of a diving group, so also very into diving and very experienced. On the night of September 9th, at midnight, Brazier, Maupin, and a group of divers made a dive into the cave. They all made it down through all of the chambers until they finally made it to the entrance of the 4th chamber. But as experienced as the boys were, they weren't fully prepared. They didn't have any backup lights and no safety line. So a safety line is very important when cave diving, so it's connected to the surface or at least near the surface, and it's your guide. It's the way that you know how to get out of the cave and back up to the surface.
It's like rock climbing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So especially with the risk of getting silted out. So if you get silted out, you have your line that can get you out. But either way, they had this impulse to explore the 4th chamber, so they just had to do it. So Maupin took off his tank, backed into the tight passage, and pulled
Oh
his
my God,
tank
you're
in with
going
him.
backwards too.
He's going backwards.
Oh, he's going backwards.
Brazier followed right behind him. Joe
Doing
Moy,
the same thing?
Mhm.
Okay.
Joe Moy was one of the people in the diving group, and he looked down just as Brazier disappeared into the entrance. He knew that this exploration wasn't part of the plan. He tried to get Brazier's attention, but Brazier just kept backing into the entrance of the fourth chamber, never once looking back up at Moy. Moy knew that Brazier and Maupin did not have the right equipment for this dive, so they had tanks that were made of a different material than the one that Moy had. So Moy's was able to hold more air than the tanks that Maupin and Brazier had. His tank was already starting to get low, so that meant that the other two boys' tanks were almost completely empty.
Yeah.
He tried to get their attention by flashing his light, banging on his own tank with his diving knife, anything to get their attention, but nothing worked.
Do you think they were ignoring?
I think part of it was ignoring because they had talked about the plan beforehand and they're all divers, so they've all discussed it. They'd never said, we're going to go into the fourth chamber.
So this one guy probably they knew would be like, absolutely not.
Right.
Yeah.
So Maupin and Brazier probably talked on the side and they're like, we're going into the fourth chamber, didn't tell any of the other 7 people of their group.
Yeah.
So Moy left a light at the entrance for his 2 friends, so put his flashlight there knowing that they would need light and swam back up to the surface of the well. As Moy got to the surface...
Like through all the chambers.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. As he got to the surface, he noticed the water around him turning a chocolate brown. A telltale sign that silt had been stirred up down below, and those in the cave, Brazier and Maupin, were now pretty much blind, and Moy feared the worst. The remaining group members tried to do a few recovery dives on their own that night, but each time they were unsuccessful. It was dark, they were exhausted, and they were in shock.
Yeah.
And they knew that the outcome for their friends, they knew they were dead.
Yeah.
Don Dibble was awoken that night by a San Marcos police officer and his diving buddy, Paul Bedaglia. He was informed about the 2 now dead divers and how a recovery dive would be needed.
Wait a minute. How is he able to recover these people if most people die when they go down there?
He's an expert diver. I will get into it in literally just a second.
Okay.
So Dibble, Battaglia, and 2 other members of the Hayes County Volunteer Body Recovery Unit drove to Jacob's Well. It was obviously dark when they got there, and they knew that they would have to wait until the morning to do any sort of successful rescue dive. So Dibble was a former Navy diver, and he held the highest dive rating one could hold, Master Scuba Instructor, which had been awarded to him by the Professional Associate of Diving Instructors.
Oh, wow.
So you can't go any higher than what he has, which is why he can do these dives.
Yeah.
So 2 divers
And even he is saying it's not worth it.
Right.
So it's like,
He doesn't go down there for fun.
Right.
He only goes down there when a body needs to be recovered.
And I feel like people like that, I'm like, you are willing to push the limits in certain things, but not willing to risk your life for just glory.
And you're also, by going down and doing something dangerous like this, you're risking other people's lives.
Correct. Because they're going to try to get you.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's definitely a very selfish way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. So 2 divers went down first to take a look around and sort of assess the scene and see what type of recovery dive this would be. So the divers made their way down to the 3rd chamber and looked around. They could not see the bodies, but noticed that the passage to the 4th was almost completely closed with gravel.
Oh, God.
The 2 returned to the surface and explained how they were nervous about the situation. Dibble decided they needed a bigger crew, more equipment, and needed to do this during the day. So the next morning, they returned at 10 a.m. 2 divers again went down.
10 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess they got to wait for it to be bright.
Right. That's what I was thinking, too.
Yeah.
I'm like, beginning a day, you're getting there at like 6 a.m., but it's like the sun's not up.
Right.
And it's September, so in September, it's getting light at like 8 or 9.
Mm-hmm.
So 2 divers again went down to look at the situation. They also started to move gravel around to hopefully create a wide enough opening to the 4th chamber for them to be able to pass through, but it only made it worse. Every time they moved some gravel out of the way, more took its place.
It's like when you're playing on the beach and you have a hole.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no matter what they're moving out, more's coming in. After hearing this, Dibble decided to go down himself and take a look around. He went down and made it to the 3rd chamber, looking around for the bodies. He noticed the opening where the 2 divers were last seen was impassable. Checking his gauge, Dibble knew he had about 10 minutes of air at this depth. So he knew he had enough time to get up, but he knew at this depth, because you're taking deeper breaths, he can only stay down here for 10 minutes.
Oh, okay.
He slowly and carefully stuck his head and shoulders into the opening, trying to see if he could find a way through, but saw nothing. He knew that a recovery would be impossible unless the deep gravel bed was somehow removed. As he was coming to this thought, he was hit in the goggles by small pieces of gravel, and at this point, he knew he was in danger. At that moment, there was a gravel slide, and Dibble became trapped at the entrance. The water silted up, and Dibble couldn't see a thing. Both of his arms were pinned to his side, and he was unable to move at all. He was unable to jerk the guideline he was holding to allure his partner that he was in danger, and he needed help.
He's like partially in the 4th chamber?
Right, because he's trying to see if he can get himself into the 4th chamber. So he started to breathe heavily, quickly depleting his air, and in a short amount of time, he was out. Dibble knew he was going to die, and in that moment, he accepted his fate. He didn't know exactly how one drowned. All he knew was that you either inhaled the water or you drank it. Those are the two ways people died, like by drowning. Not wanting to go out by inhaling the water, he decided to drink it. So Dibble spit the regulator from his mouth and began drinking the water. He took 2 or 3 big gulps of the water before his body seized in some sort of automatic survival reflex. In that moment, his body lurched and thrashed and somehow dug itself free. Suddenly, his buddy Turner appeared and handed Dibble a regulator that had been on a spare tank they had brought down with them. He put it in his mouth and heaved the air into his lungs. He made it to the surface but had suffered a very bad diving injury.
Oh my God.
As he had gulped the water, then was able to breathe air, the air in his stomach started to expand, especially with the rapid ascending.
Oh my God.
The air in his stomach actually expanded so much in the time it took to get to the surface that when he got out of the water, his stomach looked like a basketball. Air had been trapped in places it shouldn't be in his body, and he had to be taken to a decompression chamber at Brooke Army Medical Center. It was determined that Dibble's stomach wall had ruptured, and he had a case of periodontitis that should have already killed him. He was later told he was suffering from the equivalent of 5 ruptured appendixes.
Oh my God.
After some surgery, miraculously, Dibble did recover.
Oh my God.
But in the meantime, while he was recovering, the search for Maupin and Brasher continued. So that was his near-death experience, going to rescue someone. So this time, a professional diver from Austin, 46-year-old Don Broad, was brought in. He was a highly regarded and very experienced diver, and he was familiar with rescue dives. So Broad went down and took a look. He also noticed the gravel and how nothing could happen until the gravel was out of the way. So he made his way back up to the surface with the opinion that the only safe way to get the bodies out would be to airlift all of the gravel out of the well, a process that would take up to 2 months to actually do.
Jesus.
The removal process began, but it wasn't going well. With every bit of gravel that was removed, more came in and filled up the space.
Yeah.
After a lot of work and groups coming in and more dives happening, one group sent a man down with a camera. He recorded what he could find and was able to get the camera into the passage. So kind of what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
The gravel had been cleared out slightly at this point. When he came back up to the surface, the recording was reviewed. In the video, they saw a cluster of fish, and when looking more closely at that spot, they saw a tank valve, and nearby was a regulator mouthpiece. This discovery made it clear that the bodies were down there. So they knew they were down there, but you need the confirmation.
Yeah.
But the operation was starting to be too much, and costs were starting to become way too much, so operations were halted. A 2-day break was taken, and when they went back to the entrance of the 4th chamber, it was again closed. It was turning out to be a futile and incredibly expensive operation, so 12 days after Maupin and Brasher died, the search for their bodies was called off. So this was about the time when Dibble, fully recovered, went down to put the steel grate over the opening. Brasher's remains had washed away during a 1981 flood, which is when they were found 10 years after the dive.
Oh my God.
So it shows that there is a way out of this cave.
Oh.
Somehow, where it connects to Cypress Creek.
Maybe if you keep going down,
potentially
there's a way to get out.
Something.
Yeah.
But so his body somehow made it out and were found 10 years later.
But not in the cave.
Mm-mm.
Like it didn't come back up to the surface of the hole.
I
or
don't
whatever.
think so.
It was like completely somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
It didn't ever really talk about his. All that it would say about his remains were that they were washed away during a flood and found 10 years later.
Okay.
It never went in depth
Yeah.
about how it was found.
Yeah.
No matter how many articles I read.
Yeah.
Maupin's remains were discovered 20 years after.
Woo.
Kathy and Dan Misiasek, 2 divers, were part of the San Marcos area recovery team. Smart. So a little fact check from my previous statement, there have been a few people who have seen the 4th chamber.
Oh.
They describe it as a virgin cave with fantastic limestone formations and no gravel. But the silt in the 4th chamber is so fine that just one small misstep or one small miskick, and the silt will completely clog the chamber.
Yeah.
So in October 2000, the Misiasks a teammate, Jim Price, and a team of cavers were able to get into the 4th chamber to videotape it and try to map it out. Because they were pretty much no one has been in there.
Yeah.
They hadn't been expecting to find any remains in the cave until one of the Misiaks spotted the first traces of Maupin down a keyhole opening in the floor of the 4th chamber. So a very small opening.
Yeah.
More than 100 feet below the surface.
Wow.
Quote, I first noticed one femur bone, then a second, and as I descended into the keyhole-shaped tunnel, I could see a heavily corroded scuba tank and wetsuit. Miasik wrote in a chronicle of the event. It was obvious we had stumbled upon some human remains. At the bottom of the tunnel lay the corroded scuba tank with attached hoses. The tank was still attached to a shorty beaver tail style wetsuit with weight belt. Masiacs found a human skull nearby, then stumbled upon a Neptune's Locker Diving Association patch. It was from Maupin's hometown of Pasadena, more or less confirming that they had found Maupin's body.
But that was the only remains though.
Mm-hmm.
So
they had already found the guy beforehand.
Yeah. No, I know. But I just remember you saying like in the beginning that there might just also be a lot of remains down there because most people who go in there die.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just surprised they only found one.
Yeah.
You know?
No articles really talked about if they did recover, like how they recovered the body, but I'm pretty sure they did recover it because I saw one article that talked about the family finally finding like closure, more or less.
Right.
So I assume they did find a way to get the body out.
Yeah.
So that was that story.
Oh.
So the next story took place in 1983. So 27-year-old Southwest Texas State University students, Richard Patton and Clark McConnell.
What's with these Texans?
Well, it's in Texas.
Oh, right. It's the same place. Sorry. I thought we were also going somewhere new. Oh, sorry.
No, we're all Jacob's Well here.
Okay.
So these two guys were experienced scuba divers. They were in an advanced scuba diving class together and had all the certs they needed to do so. They wanted to explore Jacob's Well. They had been before, but this time they wanted to explore the fourth chamber, a place they had yet to explore but had heard so much about.
But so this mapping thing, though, you said 20 years after. Okay.
Yeah.
So never mind.
Yeah. So on this particular day, they arrived at Jacob's Well and entered the water around 8:30 p.m. They made their way through all of the chambers.
It's dark.
I know! The other people went at midnight. Like, I mean, after you get down to a certain depth, it's dark anyways.
That's true.
So they made their way through all of the chambers, squeezing and swimming until they finally reached the gate at the bottom of Chamber 3, the tunnel that would lead them into Chamber 4. They knew the gate was there. They had been to the well before and had seen it. So knowing the gate was there, they brought equipment with them that would allow them to pry open the gate so that they could open and get into the elusive fourth chamber.
Jesus.
Richard Patton was the one to go into the chamber first, while Clark waited just at the opening. Richard took off his packs from his back and began pushing them ahead of him, so he's going in head first, making sure to keep the respirator in his mouth. He started to wiggle and slither his way into the opening. He finally managed to squeeze himself into the chamber completely out of sight.
Okay, wait. Sorry. Think I'm getting myself confused with terminology. So when they're going into these like tunnel things, that's not the same as a chamber?
No, some are tunnels into chambers.
Okay.
The second chamber is a tunnel.
Okay.
But all of the other ones have tunnels to get into the chamber.
And so the chamber is more of like a large, so to speak, space.
Yep.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay. Got it.
Yep. So not even a few seconds later, Clark saw Richard desperately trying to get out of the chamber. As Clark watched his friend trying to get out, he noticed something horrible. Richard no longer had the respirator in his mouth. In fact, he didn't have any of his equipment anymore. Richard, on a breath hold, was clearly struggling to get out of the passage and free himself.
And this was the guy who went second?
Who went in first.
Oh, went in first.
So Clark and Richard are in chamber 3.
Yeah.
Richard goes into chamber 4.
Yeah.
And then comes out.
Oh, and then comes out.
Immediately, before Clark could even think about going in.
Okay.
Richard immediately comes out.
Okay.
Without anything.
Oh.
So he's clearly struggling to get out of the passage and free himself. Clark sprang into action and began yanking his friend out of the opening, helping to free him. Once Richard was fully out, Clark took his respirator out of his mouth and pretty much forced it into Richard's mouth so that he could finally have some air. From here, the pair started to buddy breathe, which is where they take turns breathing using the oxygen that Clark had. So one would take a breath and hold it while the other did the same, and then they would pass it back and forth. So this is only used as an emergency technique.
Yeah.
One that is not used for leisure diving. This is really only used in an emergency situation, and when this needs to be done, it means you need to get to the surface ASAP.
Yeah.
But they were both experienced and knew what to do. They both calmed down, and while buddy breathing, started to make their way through the chambers and back up to the surface.
Okay, good.
They made their way through the third chamber. They squeezed through the tight opening, made their way into the second chamber. They kept kicking and buddy breathing. Sorry, I think the third chamber is the tunnel.
Okay.
Like the tube. Sorry, I mixed those up.
Yeah.
So they kept kicking and buddy breathing, making their way to the opening of the first chamber when all of a sudden their heads hit a wall. With horror, they realized that they had accidentally made their way into the false chimney. And to add to their overwhelming horror, they heard the one sound a diver never wants to hear. A ka-thunk that let them know that the air in their tank was completely empty.
Oh my God.
So this is one example of why it is crucial to use a guideline, especially in a cave that is something like false chimney.
Oh my God.
So Clark had just taken a full breath of air before the tank ran out, so he immediately turned and on a breath hold was able to make his way out of the false chimney, through the opening and to the surface.
Wow.
When he made it to the surface, he turned back to look for Richard, but Richard hadn't been so lucky. In the fear and panic of hitting the false chimney and running out of air, Richard was in total and complete darkness. No matter what he did or which direction he turned, he kept bumping into the wall of the false chimney.
I thought they were like basically connected if they're sharing this.
Well, they have the tank somehow near them and they're just taking turns with the regulator. It's probably on Clark's back still because it was his tank.
Yeah.
So he takes his big breath, gives it to Richard, and Richard goes to take the breath, and that's when it clunks, saying that it's out of air.
Oh, so Richard didn't get a...
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
So Clark got the breath, and as he's passing it to Richard, as Richard was taking it, that's when the clunk happened.
Oh.
So in this false chimney is unfortunately where Richard drowned. Rescue divers eventually went down to recover his body, one of the rescuers being Don Dibble. His body was found jammed up at the end of the false chimney. Dibble said this was a very emotional rescue for him, as Richard had been a student in a diving class that Dibble had taught.
Oh.
I know. So then the last victim of the cave was of the well is Wayne Wood.
The last, as in the last you're going to talk about?
The last known victim.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So Wood was a mail carrier in Austin and was a very experienced topside caver. So I think that's normal caving. So they would say topside cavers, and nowhere tells me what a topside caver is.
Yeah.
So using my vast knowledge of caving, I assumed it's someone who caves above the water, and then an underwater caver is in the water.
Yeah.
He was also a very experienced open water diver, but he had never attempted cave diving, which is very, very different. So you can scuba in the open ocean, but cave diving is completely different. Different certifications, different requirements,
so
everything.
Open diving is like the stuff you do in the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yep.
Got it.
So it was the evening of February 26, 1984, which is why they say from 1964 to 1984, we know how many people died, because 1984 is when he passed away, and that's the last known victim of this cave.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Did we go into why?
No. I think it's just because things got so strict and regulated that it just made it more impossible to do things like this.
Honestly, good.
Yeah. So it was the evening of February 26, 1984, when two scuba diving instructors, John and Danny, and Wayne Wood, an experienced diver, entered the water of Jacob's Well. So they were all experienced in their own ways, but on top of that, they were all trained and had all of the necessary equipment. To start their dive, they ran a guideline that went all the way down to the fourth chamber. After that was in place, they actually started their dive. I don't know how you drop a guideline.
I was just about to ask that.
I was thinking the same thing.
Just about to ask that.
The videos I watched and the stuff I read never explained that.
Is it like anchored at the bottom?
I don't know.
Okay.
Which I feel like it couldn't be, because some of those, like, it's not just a straight drop through everything. So I'm not really sure how that works. But anywho, they had a guideline.
Yeah.
Went all the way down to the fourth chamber. So they're using it. They get through all the chambers. They make it to the fourth. And I didn't know there were more chambers at this point, but there are.
Oh.
So the men saw an even more narrow passage.
So they get through the fourth one.
Mm-hmm, they're in the fourth.
Okay.
So as they're in the fourth, they notice an even smaller passage to what would become known as the fifth chamber. So this chamber is even more narrow than the entrance to the fourth. So, of course, air tanks had to be removed again to get into this next chamber and pushed in front of you. Wayne took off his tanks and started to make his way through the narrow opening of the fifth chamber. So this chamber, again, is essentially just a tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
So it's 5 feet wide and 2 feet high. So 1.5 meters by 0.61 meters. After Wayne made it through, John followed. So they're now in chamber 5. Danny is in chamber 4.
Okay, there's 3 of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Danny's main job in here was to maintain their guidelines, as he planned to. He also was going to carefully swim around the fourth chamber a bit and see if he could find the tanks that some divers had left behind in 1979.
Oh.
So the two people we talked about, Maupin and Brazier.
Yeah.
Because they haven't been rescued by 1984.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. It had been 10 years.
So this was well before their bodies were eventually recovered.
Yeah.
So in this chamber, Danny found that it was 8 feet high and 10 feet wide. So 2.4 meters by 3.05 meters. While Danny is in the fourth chamber, John and Wayne make their way into the sixth chamber.
Oh my God.
This chamber has never been drawn on a map. So it is still unclear what this cave even has in it.
Oh my God.
John could tell that this chamber was larger but had much finer mud, not gravel, which meant that silting out was much easier to do, making it very dangerous. So back to Danny in the fourth.
Okay.
So we have John Wayne, in the sixth, and Danny is in the fourth.
Okay.
Keeps being bugged.
I see it.
So as he's swimming around, he does find the tanks that have been left behind. He tied them to their guideline to bring them back up to the surface.
Oh, wow.
He then squeezed his way into the fifth chamber.
Oh, no.
To do so, he had to lie flat on his stomach with his tank in front of him. But with the movement and the slight struggle required to get through, some gravel started to swirl. The water was starting to get cloudy, and Danny started to get anxious. His anxiety and slight panic caused him to get himself and his tanks tangled in the guideline. He made himself calm down and untangled himself from the line. With that, he went back into the fourth chamber to wait for John and Wayne.
Good idea.
From his struggle, the visibility in the water was starting to get bad, and John and Wayne noticed in their chamber. They had been measuring the chamber to make measurements because it's never been on any map. But when they noticed the worsening conditions, Wade told John that they had what they needed, the measurements, and they could head out. Using their safety line, they moved from the sixth chamber to the fifth. As they tried to get to the fourth, though, they noticed that there were tanks in their way, blocking their way out. When Danny had gotten tangled and freaked out, he ended up leaving the tanks in the way.
Oh, God.
But with some pushing and pulling, they got the tanks out of the way and continued on. They met up with Danny in the fourth chamber and continued. But when they reached the entrance between the third and fourth chamber, John looked back and realized that Wayne was nowhere to be seen.
Oh, God.
At first, John thought maybe Wayne was getting the last things together and would be right behind them. Wayne hadn't signaled that anything was wrong, so they had no reason to believe it. John and Danny decided to continue on ahead and start with their decompression stops, and that Wayne would shortly be back with them. But halfway through their stops, there was still no sign of Wayne. John and Danny kept looking into the depths, waiting for their friend to emerge. When he didn't, they started to get worried. They didn't have enough air to go back down and look for Wayne, so they had to continue with their decompression stops and make their way to the surface.
Oh, God.
They alerted authorities when they surfaced. Wayne's body was discovered the next day at the entrance of the 5th chamber. His mask was in place and his tank was by his side. He was also laying directly on top of the safety line. Even to this day, no one knows what happened to him in his final moments. So his mask wasn't messed up. His tank wasn't messed up. He was on the line, so he didn't get lost.
He was able to get out.
Mm-hmm. No one knows what happened.
But the thing wasn't in his mouth?
No, it was in his mouth. Everything was exactly how it needed to be. His tank obviously ran out of air, but it wouldn't have run out of air until he got to the surface.
So, because I was like, was it like a suicide where he like, but if the thing is still in his mouth.
Mm-hmm. That's why no one knows what happened.
Crazy.
So some divers have been lucky enough to make it out of scary situations. So Diego Adame, a 21-year-old freediver and daredevil from San Antonio, was diving in the cave in July 2015 when he lost his flipper while freediving in the cave.
Ooh.
Freediving means you don't have any supplemental oxygen.
Yeah.
Like you're on a breath hold.
Yeah.
He said that he had been diving in Jacob's well, quote, more times than he can count.
Those people can hold their breath for like a long ass time.
Yes.
It's crazy.
So on July 13th, 2015, he was freediving, which is, again, when you're diving by yourself, all on a breath hold. When he was 100 feet down, he lost his flipper. So his chances of swimming back up to the surface in time didn't look good. Adame,
And was he wearing one flipper on?
No. Yeah, he had a flipper on both foot, like on
one flipper, but both
per
feet
feet.
were in it. Oh, per feet. So he still had one.
He still had one.
Okay.
But when you're on a freehold, you need both of them.
Oh, sure.
to get you up.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So he said that once he felt his flipper come off, he knew he needed to get to the surface ASAP.
I don't know if this was mentioned, but for free diving, because you obviously can only go so deep because you're holding your breath,
Mm-hmm.
do you have the same risk of the bends if you go up too fast?
No.
Okay.
Because you're not going down to where the nitrogen is happening, and because you're not breathing in oxygen, you're not getting as much nitrogen into your system.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
So with him knowing that he had to get to the surface, it caused a surge of adrenaline, which increased his heart rate, which depleted his oxygen quicker.
Oh, shit.
He said,
my
quote,
God.
I had
You got to be relaxed for that, don't you?
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
I didn't either.
I was like, oh, adrenaline, good. He'll get himself up fast.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah.
Mhm. So he said, quote, I had a flashback of another freediver who has lost a flipper while freediving in a cavern. He went back to grab his flipper and blacked out before he reached the surface.
Oh, God.
So not only did he lose his flipper, but when he pushed off of the cave's wall to try to get back up, the flashlight on his wrist also dislodged. But he was prepared and had many backup flashlights, so he was fine. He had to cut his weight belt to make it back to the surface in time before his breath ran out. And he did make it back to the surface in time.
Thank God.
So there's a video of his dive on YouTube, and I watched it. And literally no thanks. So while he's diving, you can hear these gasps for air. So he said that this is called the mammalian dive reflex. So, quote, after holding your breath for an extended period of time, your diaphragm begins to have contractions.
Oh, because it's trying to get air.
Because your survival instinct is give me air. I'll show you the video as it's no, you have to watch it. It's a very concerning sound. And I'm watching it when I was with Mom and Joe, and they're looking over at me. I was like, it's a diving video. We're fine. So it shows him exploring the cave and looking around. You can also see the moment he loses his flipper and immediately starts to make it back to the surface. It cuts off right when he reaches the surface. So that's Jacob's well. Isn't it terrifying?
Definitely doesn't sound like a good idea.
So now, Mackenzie, would you rather go to the Conjuring House or go to the 4th chamber? Be smart about your answer.
Do I have to go to the 4th chamber?
Yes.
I thought it was just scuba diving in general.
No, I have changed it at the end of my story. 4th chamber or Conjuring House. I told you it was going to change. Or maybe I said it in my head, but I knew it was going to change when I got to the end of my story.
Okay, well, what are the requirements for the house?
We just would do a ghost hunt in there. You'd be with me.
How long do I have to stay in there?
I mean, we'd go from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m.
What?
That's how long a typical ghost hunt is.
6 hours?
Mm-hmm. You get there late, you set up all of your equipment, you explore the house, you look at everything that's going on, you go over your
Are
equipment.
you going to provide drugs for me to stay awake?
Okay, so people who don't do drugs take a nap during the day so that they can stay up later.
Do I nap?
You're gonna have to if we go to the Conjuring House.
And you think that my anxiety level is going to be calm enough that I can nap during the day?
Your anxiety will keep you up at night. I promise you, you will not fall asleep in a haunted house. I had a sleepover at a haunted house,
I
and
might pass out.
You won't. Your body
I
will keep
will
you up.
be hyperventilating because I will be having a panic attack.
So now are we diving or are we conjuring? I know you want to say conjuring.
I can't do 6 hours in that house.
You can.
No, I can't. First of all,
it's either 6 hours in the house or 5 hours in the
doing
cave.
for fucking 6 hours?
Investigating.
Just constantly going to room, being like, hello, are you there?
No, how we did it was...
I don't have the attention span for that.
No, we would sit in the room and you just kind of chat with everyone you're with.
For 6 hours.
Well, you're in one room, then you go into the other room, like your little headquarters area. You might review some of the footage, you might talk a little bit, you eat a little bit, you drink a little bit, then you go into another one. You kind of debrief. It's because you want to be there for the witching hour, which is 3 p.m. or 3 a.m.
I'm going to go with caving because that seems like
That's 5 hours.
Yeah, but at least I'm moving and doing something where I'm like constantly having to focus.
You're literally just talking to... When you're diving, you can't talk.
That's fine. I know it sounds crazy, but believe it or not, I am capable. For the house, both out of boredom and fear.
It's not boredom, though. It's kind of fun. You're just like chatting. It's like we would just be talking, like normally. You and I could talk for 6 hours. It would go by very quickly.
Yeah, I wouldn't end up leaving the room with the light on. I hope you know that.
Oh, we could keep the lights on.
In the whole house?
Yeah. We kept the lights on when we did some investigations because I got scared.
The lights are on.
So Conjuring House.
It's definitely more of a harder decision than it was before. I will give you that.
Okay, that's all I wanted.
Yes. The caving, because like I said, it's like when you have to decide for traffic.
Oh,
I would rather have traffic and be moving, or I'd rather take the back roads than be moving
Absolutely.
versus sitting in traffic.
True.
So that's kind of where I'm at, because I'm like, if I'm moving and doing that, I'm so focused on myself in the now versus there. I'm just going to be so focused on the what if. And you've seen me when I get anxious. I'm not a pleasant person.
So it's better if you have that anxiety underwater?
Yeah, because I can't yell at anybody.
Okay.
It's all in my own head.
But yeah, isn't that terrifying?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have to do that as my first diving experience, or can I?
No, you'd have to get certified and everything. So it's a long process to get there.
See, I feel like in that aspect of it, it would definitely be a better option, because I'm like, if I really had the discipline to do that, which that's the other thing. I'm not going to have the discipline to do that. I'm going to have to pick The Conjuring just out of my own ADHD, not able to.
Wonderful.
That kind of thing.
I'm not going to say we're going to go there because it also scares me.
Well, I know this is a hypothetical.
It is. Mm-hmm.
There's no way you couldn't. And the more people try, the more I'm like, you're just digging me deeper into the no hole.
Into the Jacob's Well.
And then they say, like, come on, a little bit more.
But yeah, so that's Jacob's Well. Those are terrifying diving experiences.
I thought it was a legit well.
Well, in Canada. It looks like a well. That's why they named it Jacob's Well.
I was like, oh, is she going back to that one where she like started talking about it and people disappeared and then just stopped?
Yeah, like the Devil's Seat or
yeah.
something like that.
I'm like, oh, okay, cool. So she's going to maybe fill in some gaps. There's like people going missing in this well. This is going to be crazy.
Well, people are going missing.
Yeah, but it's not a well.
Yeah.
It's a cave.
But yeah, no, I would never. I kept telling Mom about it because like at first I told her the story. I was like, there's 4 chambers, blah, blah. And then I read the next story about Wayne Wood and I was like, oh my God, there's 6 chambers.
You will never believe it.
I was like, I thought there were only 4, but listen to this.
Wow. I mean, I'm glad that the people in the area, authorities, whoever is in charge, put their foot down.
They're making it as hard as possible for people to go. And now if you want to go, you have to have an appointment time to just even swim in the like top water of the well.
Which sucks for the people that don't want to do all those things.
Yeah, but I think it's good though because it's like a way to keep count of who's there and keep track of who's there.
Absolutely. I think
no one can dive.
I think it's a great idea. It just sucks for like someone like me who would love to go and check that out without going diving.
No, yeah, but you can go just chill in the well.
Do you have to?
You still need an appointment.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
Like.
So it makes it a little bit more difficult. It's not just like a place you can go chill and hang out anymore. You need an appointment and like a time slot. But I think it's good because it does decrease the ability of people to go diving.
Obviously it's working if that's the last known death that we know of.
Yeah.
I mean, unless there's an easy way to sneak in, but I feel like
unless
you have nobody, someone is going to be like, my whatever is missing.
Right.
And so, and if they know that you're that kind of person, I don't know. So I feel like too, we would know.
But yes, you can see why I went a little overboard on this one because that's just so fascinating. There's so many good videos on YouTube that you can keep watching. Just
Okay, would you rather go cave diving or just cave spelunking?
cave spelunking because I can breathe.
You have to go in every chamber, no matter how small.
Cave spelunking
Okay.
because I can breathe. Except what terrifies me is when people go caving and they're like, oh yeah, I just have to get through this really small thing. So I just have to exhale all of the like air from my lungs so I'm smaller and I can fit. I'm like,
would you go in the pancake room?
Well, because I know that people go in there and come out and you went in, I could do that. But I'm much bigger than you probably were then.
I mean, I'm much bigger than I was then. I was 10.
Yeah, so I don't know how
individual.
I don't know if I could squeeze my body into that.
I don't think I could either.
I'm a much bigger individual than 10-year-old Kenzie.
I mean, I also wouldn't even be able to go in because I'd be like, trauma, I'm triggered. At this point, because it was when I was 10, there's only bits and pieces of it I remember. Just the parts that I've retold a bunch of times.
Yeah, the trauma's blocked everything else out.
Yeah. And I have, my memory is truly selective.
It truly is.
Yeah. I don't know.
But yeah, so hopefully that scared people for cave diving. And if you've ever cave dove or scuba dived, let me know.
Send pics.
Yeah, send pics, or it didn't happen.
And if you're going to do those things, be
Listen to
humble.
this episode first.
Well, that too. But
be humble.
Don't feel like you are the exception.
Oh, yeah.
Have humility to be like, I am just as...
If you see a grate that says don't go because you'll die, then be like, cool, I'm not going to go. I'm going to go back to the surface.
Bitch about that it sucks because you would love to be able to do that, but value your life.
Yeah.
Because it is worth it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And listen to this episode first.
Yeah.
Because then you'll hear this advice.
Exactly. Exactly.
Oh, that was real spooky.
I know.
Real spooky.
I had way too much fun researching it.
I can see that. You have a big ass smile on your face.
I know. All right, Mackenzie, what watery, scary thing do you have for us tonight?
So, similar as in it's a place.
Okay.
Different because it's a swamp.
Okay.
A very big swamp.
Okay.
A very famous swamp.
Mm-hmm.
The Everglades National Park.
Ooh.
Yeah. Because when I think of water and I think of scary things, I either think really deep down in the ocean or out in the middle of nowhere in the ocean.
Uh-huh.
Or a swamp.
Okay. Valid.
Yeah. Blame modern media for making swamps always scary.
Well, yeah, because you can't see what's in them. That's scary.
Yeah. Yeah. It's scary. And it's not going to get much better. We're still going to be scared after we talk about this place.
Maybe even more scared.
Yeah. I'm not eager to go.
Okay.
So
I've never really had a fear of swamps. So I'm wondering if this will spark a fear.
Maybe specifically of this one, my thing is not so much the swamp as the bugs.
Oh, God. Okay.
Knowing the bugs, that they're everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't think I could handle that.
Mm-mm.
You should see me when I was walking on that nature trail in Chickatee with my dad.
Oh, my God.
Flailing all over the place.
Yup.
At one point, I was literally trying to hide behind him.
Go to the tall person.
Pretty much.
Oh, my God. When we were at the beach, because of all the laying still water that there was, the amount of mosquitoes was insane.
Oh, I'm sure.
Jared and I went on a run one day, actually. Yeah. He has to get into shape for fire stuff. And I just had been to the gym for a week. So we did a mile. I got 2 bug bites on that. We went down to the beach later that
That's
day.
what you get for running.
I know. We went down to the beach later that day, just with books and chairs. Dad and Jared were going to fish. Mom and I were just going to read. So we were
I'm sure the fishing with whatever you have to use to...
No, that wasn't bad.
Oh,
it was as we were walking down, I had one on my arm, but I was holding coffee and my chair and I couldn't get it and I could see it sucking my blood. And then I got one on my hand that still itches and I got a couple other bug bites just walking down. And then on the beach, I had a few and I smacked some. And then we went to a bar that night. It was on the beach, me, Dad, and Jared. And we're sitting there.
What? Mom didn't go? That's
shocking.
Nuts.
It was only 8:30. I slapped one off him.
Well, that's her bedtime.
He slapped one off me. I slapped one in the air. People are asking, does anyone have bug spray? This is so bad. Because Jared and I had gone to that bar a while ago, or 2 years ago. No bugs. Beautiful vibes.
Well, it wasn't
Loved
right
it.
after a storm.
Right. It was awful. We stayed for one drink, did a quick shot, and then went back. Oh my God. What are those from?
Apparently they're ant bites, according to my mother.
So all the bugs.
All the bugs.
All right. Back to our bugs at this swamp.
Well, We don't talk about bugs too much.
Thank God.
Everglades National Park covers the southwestern portion of the region, as in the United States,
Oh.
and is the largest subtropical wilderness left in the United States.
Oh, wow.
Oh my God. You want to hear something funny? He's coming down the stairs anyway. So
It's louder when you sneak down.
Okay. So I got to tell you this funny story. So I go to pick up my prescription today from CVS. $4.
I know.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
$530 to $4.
Yep.
So I'm going back into my car and I'm like, you know how you like when you're getting in the door, you kind of go around a little bit so that when you open the door, you're not in the way.
Mm-hmm.
So I do that and I see a little boop pop up and there's a little wiener dog. And I was like, oh my goodness. And then a friend, he popped up too.
Oh my God.
The window was cracked. I was like, oh my goodness. Hello. And like the guy just like looks at me and recognizes what I'm doing and just like leaves it. I was like, well, wow, you guys are just so stinky cute.
Oh.
I get into my car. I was like, wow, day made. This is great.
That's so cute.
And so my CVS, I don't know, whenever I go pick up my prescription, sometimes like, even though I have bars, it's like nothing wants to connect after I get out.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to get my podcast playing and I'm waiting and I'm waiting. And eventually I just zone out and forget about it because I was waiting so long. And so when it came on, I was like, ah! I died laughing. So yeah, so that was my day today.
My coworker is going to watch Van Helsing with his wife like tonight or sometime soon, this weekend maybe. And he was like, yeah, it has 3 pop-out parts. And she told me to tell her exactly when the scary parts are so that I can tell her and she can hide.
Yeah. That's, if you ever want me to watch one, that's what you're required to do. I want a list of the movie times or the times in the movie. And in addition, a heads up.
Yeah.
To be able to plug my ears
And close your eyes. Joseph, are you coming up anytime soon? Do you want me to pause? We're going whenever you're ready.
Okay. The park is 2,410 square miles or 1,542,526 acres.
Wow.
It hosts a unique blend of temperate and tropical species and freshwater and marine habitats. Part of its northern border adjoins Big Cypress National Preserve. Biscayne National Park is to the east off the Atlantic coast, and Dry Tortugas National Park lies to the southwest at the western end of the Florida Keys.
Dry turtle?
Hmm?
You said it was dry tortuga?
I think so.
Isn't tortuga turtle?
I don't know.
Oh, I think it is.
Everglades National Park's several visitor centers have natural history exhibits. The Everglades is popular with boating and canoeing enthusiasts. There are several marked canoe trails, including the 99-mile or 159-kilometer wilderness waterway along the park's western side. That is the only time I do that. The name Everglades came from early explorers who noticed the large fields of grass that seemed to go on forever. Everglades, like blades of grass.
But that would be blades.
Yeah, but if you put green and blades,
oh,
you get glades.
Interesting.
That's what I'm assuming.
Oh, I don't know if that's it, but that's what we'll go with.
Mm-hmm. Native Americans who inhabited the area named it Hay-Oki, which translates to grassy waters.
Okay. See, that one makes sense.
A lot more sense. Of course it does. The natural Everglades drainage system was supplied with fresh water entirely from rainfall and once covered more than 11,000 square miles.
Wow.
So if 2,000 is a million acres, 11,000
is way more.
Is a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It ranged in depth from 3 feet to 6 inches, and the water slowly flowed southward down the Florida peninsula at a rate of about 100 feet a day.
Oh, wow.
Efforts to drain the marsh began in the 1800s, canal construction in the 1880s, and dredging for agricultural purposes between 1905 and 1910. During these times, the Everglades water levels were artificially altered in a turbulent manner. These changes affected the quality, amount, distribution, and timing of the seasonal cycle. Additionally, nearly 1,200 square miles of land immediately south of Lake Okeechobee, love the name, was drained and converted to farmland for the production of sugarcane, vegetables, and beef cattle. Consequently, this cut off the rest of the Everglades from the lake. The changes in the natural water flow and runoff from farmland significantly altered the natural habitat. These changes caused the production of toxic algae, killed seagrass beds, created high levels of organic mercury, and flooding of seasonal wildlife feeding and nesting sites.
Oh my gosh.
This
wildlife mercury.
Yeah, it sounds bad.
Yeah, it does.
The spread of urban areas and introduction of exotic species also contributed to ecological problems, and now roughly half the original natural Everglades area has now been destroyed.
Damn Florida.
Damn humans.
That too. Humans in Florida.
That was all us.
And it made Florida the Florida that we know it today.
Yeah.
Like us humans made Florida into Florida.
Right. Because the Native Americans didn't have the same problems.
No, they never do.
They could live in the swamp and be okay.
Is that your foot?
Yes.
Oh.
We fucked it up, but we tried to fix it. And
Okay.
we have fixed it a little bit.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm game.
Okay. So efforts to preserve the Everglades ecosystem began in the mid-20th century. Government discussions on how to reverse the region's ecological damage began in the early 1970s at the state level and eventually to the federal level by 1990. A restoration plan was passed by the Congress in 2000, and it was made so that it would be implemented over several decades.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah. So obviously, Rome wasn't built in a day.
Right.
It calls for the removal of levees and for changes in water management to more closely mimic the natural process. Water pumped out was to be stored in a reservoir system and redistributed onto the land. The plan was intended not only to restore the Everglades environment, but to preserve the profitable tourism industry and ensure adequate freshwater supplies for agriculture and the growing population of South Florida. So, two birds with one stone.
Right.
Which is fine.
Mhm.
In addition to its historical and ecological significance, the Everglades contain a variety of dark and eerie stories that are a mix of legend and truth.
This is what we love. Okay.
Here we go. Just background knowledge.
Of course.
The lost city of the Everglades is deeply intertwined with the ancient folklore of the native peoples of the region, particularly the Seminole tribe.
They have that team.
The Seminoles?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long
I know sports.
I don't know what sport that is.
Football. College football.
Okay.
I only know because my coworker was really into it.
Oh.
Would sign his emails as Go Noles.
What college?
Florida State.
Florida State. Okay.
Their name is the Florida State Seminoles.
Yeah, because Florida University is the Gators.
Okay,
That I
yeah.
do
So
know.
I said Florida State, and then he kept saying Seminoles, and I was like, the school is not called Florida State Seminoles.
Is it?
No.
No.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah.
Florida State University.
Long before settlers attempted to carve a living from the unforgiving swamplands, the Seminoles, who had lived in harmony with the Everglades for centuries, viewed the vast wetlands as sacred and teeming with spirits.
Okay. Yeah.
According to local Seminole folklore, the Everglades were home to powerful spiritual beings, including shapeshifters and guardians of the land.
Oh, so cool.
When I was writing this up, it reminded me of the Legend of Korra and like the tree thing where it like has.
I haven't watched it.
Okay, never mind. Anyway, it reminded me of like the Avatar and like the swampy stuff that they get into, and like those of you who have watched it will know exactly what I'm talking about and not look at me like I'm crazy.
Like how Lauren's looking at you.
Correct. Stories tell of strange figures that appeared in the mist, watching over the sacred land and punishing those who disturb the balance.
Oh, okay. I can get behind that.
For many, the downfall of the ghost city would be seen as the land's retaliation against outsiders who tried to exploit it. Some even believe the city is cursed, its failure a direct consequence of violating sacred ground. The Seminoles themselves never lived in permanent cities like the Lost City, but rather adapted to the changing landscape, building temporary homes on high ground and navigating the waterways. Their deep understanding of the Everglades' complex ecosystem enabled them to survive where others failed. Many Seminoles regarded the early settlers of the ghost city with suspicion, believing that the land would resist their efforts, and local legends suggest that the spirits of the swamp still haunt the ruins to this day. The Lost City remains a place where history, legend, and nature collide, an eerie symbol of the relentless power of the Everglades and the unseen forces that protect it.
Ooh.
So basically, people tried to settle there, and the swamp said,
Nope.
Nope. And I'm sure they were warned, and they're like, okay, have fun. And
Thank you.
what happened?
It's just like, don't go into the fourth chamber.
Look what happened.
Mm-hmm.
So our first legend-ish, more or less. One of those legends where it's like there's truth to it, but there's a lot of
Like an urban legend?
Kind of, yeah. There's a lot of non-answers.
Okay. And just like the Devil's Chair well.
There
A lot
was
of
no
non-answers.
answers because someone didn't look for them. That's why there was
I
no
redeemed
answers.
myself in the next episode. Thank you.
Kind of.
I did. You even said so.
I just don't remember what was said.
I
so
don't
that's
either,
why.
but you said so.
Edgar J. Watson was a notorious figure whose legacy became a blend of fact and folklore in the murky wilderness of the Florida Everglades. Born in South Carolina in 1855, Watson eventually moved to Florida in the 1880s. He settled on Chokoloskee Island and built a cabin along the mangrove-covered river that was right on top of many ancient sacred shell mounds that were sprinkled all over the island. So already, some foreshadowing.
Uh-huh.
He made his living raising hogs, shooting exotic birds for their plumage, hunting alligators, and growing sugarcane. He was known as a fairly eccentric individual, spending most of his time out at his cabin in the swamp and only giving people the most basic of greetings whenever he did venture into town. Although he was certainly shifty, odd, and made people a little nervous, most people didn't mind Mr. Watson's weird behavior at first.
It's always fine at first.
Correct. The local townspeople started whispering among themselves that Watson had many dark secrets hidden away in his cabin. One of the most well-known legends surrounding Edgar Watson links him to the murder of Belle Starr, the notorious bandit queen of the American West. Although there is little historical proof, some claim that Watson had fled the law after killing Starr in Oklahoma in 1889. We don't know for sure when he got there.
Right.
He was also known for hiring laborers, often drifters or escaped convicts, to work on his plantation, but rumors started to spread that he never intended to pay them. Many were said to disappear mysteriously after completing their work.
Oh, convenient.
Locals whispered that Watson killed his workers to avoid paying wages, dumping their bodies in the dark waters of the Everglades. Though no hard evidence ever surfaced, these rumors fueled fear and suspicion. Some even claimed that the waters surrounding his property were stained with the blood of his victims.
Oh my gosh.
Despite his fearsome reputation, Watson maintained a degree of power and influence, intimidating many into silence. He got a lot of money.
I mean, that's still kind of a thing now.
Yes. And I would not be surprised if this guy wanted to hold on to his money. Because he, like, even in the description of this story, it was like, he didn't live in exactly in an area that people were like, oh yeah, let's go live there. And the work would be hard and there's a lot of mosquitoes.
Yep.
And so I'm sure he had to maybe offer a little bit more.
Right, to get people to go out there.
And the rich
But you can offer however much you want if you don't ever intend to pay them.
Right. The rich want to stay rich. However, the local community grew increasingly uneasy, fearing they might become his next victims. In 1910, tensions boiled over. After a particularly violent incident where Watson was suspected of killing several workers, the locals, unable to rely on law enforcement in the remote region, formed a vigilante group. So all these people were dying. They did find some skeletons, but he tried to write it off as like, oh no, those are Native American
Those
remains.
were here before I was here.
Yeah, like that's from the ancient burial ground that I rudely built my house on.
Obviously.
Duh. And obviously it was, in the 1900s. There wasn't any sort of identification process.
Right.
Or anything that they could do.
So there's no proof.
Right. But then there was a couple of bodies, like more recently, that had been deceased. I think that they definitely were killed and they were found near his property. So obviously immediately he became suspect. And people think that there was even more because a lot of people would go to work for him and then you'd never see them again. And he tried to say that it was some other guy. I forget what the guy's name was. And so he was adamant it was this guy. And so he decided, well, I'm going to take it upon myself and I'm going to go get this guy because, I'm going to be my own vigilante. So he goes and he kills this guy and he comes back and there's all these people who are like, angry. We are going to take you to the sheriff to pay for your crimes. He's like, no, look, I killed the guy who actually did it. There's no body. There's just a hat with holes in it. And so they're like, no. So he tries to like bring up his gun and shoot the people, but there had been a hurricane. And so obviously you can imagine you live in a swamp, shit's going to get a little wet. And so when he went to go buy the ammo, the people who ran the store also don't like him, suspicious of him. So they gave him the waterlogged ammunition. So when he goes to shoot, nothing comes out because it's waterlogged, but they're like, well, fuck you, and go, bah! I can't do the gun noise because I'm a girl. But
no, that's not it. I know that's not it.
Yeah.
And Joe can do it.
I'm sure he can.
Joe, do the gun noise.
That doesn't sound like a gun. Anyway, they go pop, pop, pop. That's
there you go.
Gun noise I can do. Pew, pew. Yeah, pew, 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 pew. And so obviously he died. When they also, I think, like tried to take his body out yonder. And when they told the sheriffs what they did, they're like, okay, so they go get the body, they examine it, And I think they said he had like 33 bullets in him.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's dead.
Dead.
Yeah. In the years since his death, the legend of Edgar Watson has only grown. Some say his ghost roams the Everglades, haunting the waters where his victims were discarded. His life and violent end have become woven into Florida's history of the remote swamplands. So Watson's sordid story was just the beginning of mystery and murder being associated with the vast swampland. The Everglades are sparsely populated, obviously, and have veritably become a dumping ground for dead bodies.
God, oh no.
Deaths that are accidental and otherwise. So there are two main routes, although actually, I don't think there are two main routes. I'm not sure. One said US 41 and Alligator Alley, but then I saw somewhere else that US 41 in this part of the Everglades is also called Alligator Alley.
What, like the most popular place to dump bodies?
So at first I thought there was two separate roads, 41 and Alligator Alley. But then I read somewhere else.
Yet you never explained what these roads are.
Yeah, I said two main routes that run, like the two main routes, but I'm like, I'm not sure. I don't know if it's two different routes where
you just didn't say that they ran through anything. So you go two routes, but I don't know. And then you go into your whole explanation.
I figured we're talking about the Everglades.
I figured, but
Context clues.
Shut up.
Just saying.
So it's either one or it's two.
But like, I know US 41 because mom lives off of 41.
Mm-hmm.
And then another thing said that this section of 41 that's in this part is called Alligator Alley.
Oh, that would make sense.
But then there was another one that made it seem like they were two separate roads.
Okay.
I don't know. US 41 definitely goes through the Everglades. And obviously it's called Alligator Alley because of the types of reptiles that tend to inhabit the area.
That would make sense, yes.
So yeah. Over the years, these roadways or roadway, whatever it is, have seen a plethora of human remains left alongside the mosquito-infested swampland, prowling snakes, hungry alligators, and possibly murderers.
Murderers.
Murder. During the 1970s, the Everglades saw an increased number of remains that baffled authorities and even led them to believe that there might be a serial killer hiding out in the glades.
Oh my gosh.
Between 1971 and 1976, local county coroners had been called to the glades at least 11 times to examine bodies that had been discovered in the area. In 1977, 3 more bodies were discovered, bringing the total to 14.
Oh my gosh.
One thing was clear, these people had been killed and someone or someone's was using the Everglades as their dumping grounds.
The Everglade Mafia.
Some of the killers had been found and convicted, and some, quote, remain as faceless as their decomposed victims. At the time, authorities estimated that for every body found in the wilderness, there was one that will never be found.
Ew.
Collier County Sheriff's Lieutenant Curtis Mills told the news press in 1977 that at least 20 bodies had been carried out of the Everglades in his 7 years on the force.
Oh my gosh.
Mills said, quote, that's probably 50% or even less of what's really out there. In February 1971, Barbara Jean Washington was reported missing from her Marco Island apartment. Her blue 1971 Chevy Vega was also missing. A missing persons report was filed and an APB was put out for her missing car. She was found about 18 months later by a team of surveyors. It took a while for authorities to discover Barbara's identity, but a Naples dentist matched the skeleton's teeth to his patient, Barbara Jean Washington.
Right.
Her cause of death was a gunshot wound to the head. By 1977, neither her killer nor her blue Vega had ever been found. On June 17, 1972, Alan Stewart Marsh, 41, vanished from his home at the Seminole Trailer Park in Naples along with his car. A missing persons report was filed and an APB out on the missing car.
And you said the depth of the Everglades only gets to like 3 feet?
Something like that.
So it's not even like you could hide cars, like driving them into the water?
No.
Okay.
No. Well, I think, so the parts that aren't very deep are some of like the waterways that like run through it. I think there might be deeper parts.
Oh, okay.
It's just like the way it flowed.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of, I'm not sure though. Because it would take police nearly a year to find the car at the bottom of a canal.
Oh.
I don't know if this canal's in the Everglades, but it's near a place called Golden Gate Estates.
Okay.
There was also a decomposed, bullet-riddled body in the car's trunk.
Oh.
A dentist, again, identified the body's teeth belonging to Alan Marsh. 9 months later, 2 men were indicted for Marsh's murder, 24-year-old Kenneth Jenkins and 46-year-old George Thornton. Both pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and were sent to prison.
I bet people who go through dental school don't think one day the cops are going to come to me for dental records.
I feel like now they do.
Maybe. I want to ask my dentist.
Ooh, yeah. That'd be a good idea.
I go see him in like 3 weeks to get this done.
Ooh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be great.
I hope so.
Honestly, it doesn't even sound like...
I took the retainers out because I was nervous with how much I had to talk.
No, I know, but it I don't hear it anymore.
Oh, thank you.
So, unless I just got used to it, but...
It might be both.
Yeah. I did see a spit earlier, though.
I know.
In June 1974, a group of hunters discovered an object rolled in a carpet about 5 miles south of Alligator Alley. The hunters unrolled the rotting carpet and found a skeleton inside.
Ugh.
From the measurements of the remains, medical examiners determined that they belonged to a young Black man who was in his early 20s. The cause of death was a bullet in the skull, and his name remains unknown. They tried to match the body's teeth to the dental records of missing persons, but they were never able to learn his identity.
Jeez.
And therefore, they definitely don't know who killed him.
Right.
On October 31st, ding, 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 1974, an off-duty Collier County deputy was driving along US 41 towards Naples. He had to come to a stop because the body of a man was stretched out in the middle of the highway.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Fingerprints identified the body as 39-year-old James Ward, an escapee from the Miami Mental Hospital. He had been shot twice in the head, once in the left arm, and once in the chest with a shotgun.
I can see why people are thinking they're serial killers.
Uh-huh. A week later, Edgar Oliver, 21, was charged with Ward's death. So this newspaper article just kind of was more so focusing on the fact, like, these were the people who were found.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't go really into any of their investigations because obviously their killers were found.
Right.
Some, not even their identity was figured out, let alone who killed them.
Jeez.
Authorities said that Oliver drove Ward across US 41 from Dade to Collier County and shot him in the middle of the Everglades Highway. Police believe that both men were East Coast gangsters and possibly responsible for another man's death that was found in December of that year. Okay, so it gets a little confusing in this part. So I just want to make sure I had the right dates because I'm going to talk about someone that was found in December, but it's not the same man that I just said that was found in December.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So also in December of 1974, 2 resident motorists discovered the remains of a charred body stretched across the road.
Oh my gosh.
The body had been soaked with flammable liquid and set on fire. It also had 2 bullet holes in the left side. One of the victim's hands had been tucked under his stomach during the blaze, and police were able to use fingerprints to identify the victim as Willie James Revels of Miami. Because of where the body was found, Dade County police investigated the murder, but this case was also never solved.
Mm-hmm.
On December 4th, 1975, so a year later,
oh my gosh,
work crews with the Collier County Department of Transportation discovered a body in some underbrush near Immokalee. The coroner said the remains had been dead 3 to 7 days with 3 gunshot wounds to the skull. The body was determined to be of a white male, about 35 years old. A Florida driver's license was tucked between the body's legs, as if the killer wanted the police to know the identity of the victim.
That's so weird.
Police said Edward S. Hyde, 37, of Bonita Springs, was killed execution style. His killer has also never been found. On January 13th, 1976, the unidentified body of a white male was found on Alligator Alley. The coroner said that the man had been dead for 3 to 4 weeks.
Oh.
Due to the condition of the body, police weren't able to get fingerprints to identify the remains. The man had been shot twice in the back and once in the head, and he had the letters H-A-T-E tattooed on his knuckles on his right hand.
Like old tattoos?
Like knuckle tattoos.
Yeah, but like that they had been there for a while tattoos?
That it didn't say. It just said that this was on his hand.
Interesting.
But both the remains and the killer were never identified. On October 16th, 1976, 24-year-old Beverly Orr Miller's partly clad body was discovered in a wooded Lover's Lane area near Golden Gates Estates. Police said she experienced a violent death and was identified by her fingerprints. Mrs. Miller had been reported missing from her home in Naples 10 days earlier. 4 months later, an investigation turned up 18-year-old Timothy Muldrow as the assailant. Muldrow said he struck Mrs. Miller but hadn't intended to kill her. I don't know why. Like I said, it didn't really go into details.
Right.
He pleaded guilty to manslaughter and was sentenced to 15 years in prison. July of 1977 produced the remains of 20-year-old Mark Schroeder of Copeland and an unidentified male. The coroner's report said the second body had been dead between 1 to 3 years, and there was only a skeleton at that point that remained.
Right.
There were 2 gold chains found around the skeleton's neck, but the cause of death was never determined. Timmy Squires, 21, was indicted in connection with Schroeder's murder, and as of 1977, he was awaiting trial, so not sure how that turned out.
Yeah.
In November of 1977, the remains of a young girl were found in the Everglades and showed signs of another gruesome murder. Her identity and cause of death is unknown, and all that was found with her was a dark t-shirt, white shoes, and a black pearl ring. At the time, Lieutenant Mills believed that many of the homicides were drug-related or connected to organized crime. Many of these murders remain unsolved today.
Jeez.
While many have been found among the swampy waters, others seem to have simply vanished off the face of the earth. Those who have disappeared over the years are thought to have gotten lost or abandoned in the dense swamp. Some reports claim that the county gets about 400 missing person reports a year.
Oh my God.
And as of today, Collier County has a population of 330,000.
Do you think some of the people, like the remains, got eaten by alligators?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. On Alligator Alley?
Right.
Right.
Well, and that's the thing is like a lot of the cases that were mentioned, because they never find them,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know for sure if they're in there, but
Right.
because of the location of where they disappear from and its proximity to it, that's why people are like, I wonder if they got swallowed up by the swamps,
Right.
so to speak. And also those reports don't include the 3 other counties that make up parts of the Everglades.
Oh my gosh.
So Miami-Dade County is the most populated with 2.7 million residents. Obviously, that's Miami.
Right.
Broward County is second with 1.8 million, and Monroe County is the smallest of the 4 with a population of 74,000. Many people believe that Terrence Williams and Felipe Santos, who are 2 men who disappeared under eerily similar circumstances in Naples, Florida in the early 2000s, may have been dropped off in the Everglades. Whether that was alive or dead, we don't know. Both cases involve interactions with the same Collier County Sheriff's deputy, Stephen Calkins, raising suspicions of foul play.
Ooh, that is suspicious.
Despite the passage of time, neither man has been found and their disappearance still remains unsolved. Felipe Santos, a 24-year-old Mexican immigrant, vanished on October 1st, 2003 after being involved in a minor traffic accident. Deputy Calkins responded to the scene, arrested Santos for driving without a license, and reportedly planned to take him to the county jail. However, there are no records of Santos ever being booked. Calkins later claimed that he changed his mind and dropped Santos off at a local convenience store.
Mm-hmm. And so wait, he was pulled over for a traffic violation?
So he got in a minor accident.
Was he in a car?
Mm-hmm.
So then why?
He was driving without a license.
Okay, so then the cop would have picked him up, put him in the car, drove him somewhere else, and then dropped him off at a convenience store?
Yes.
Why wouldn't he have put him back at his car?
That's
suspicious.
Supposedly he changed his mind about arresting him and you just dropped him off there.
That's weird.
Well, it gets weirder. Because Santos was never seen again. And just over 3 months later, on January 12th, 2004, 27-year-old Terrence Williams, a black man, disappeared after he was pulled over by Deputy Calkins. So we should be seeing a trend at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Terrence was also driving without a valid driver's license and his car registration had expired. Witnesses reported seeing Williams get into Calkins' patrol car. So he was stopped on a traffic violation.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously was found out he didn't have the license or it was expired or whatever it was. And so again, arrest him.
Yep.
Okay. Like Santos's case, Calkins claimed he dropped Williams off at a Circle K gas station after deciding not to arrest him for driving without a license.
That's really convenient.
Well, he also tried to say too that Williams said that he worked there.
At the gas station?
Yeah. And that's why he dropped him off there. And they're like, he doesn't work here.
Right.
We don't know who this man is. However, there were no records of this, and Calkins' inconsistent statements started to raise suspicion.
Yep.
Calkins took 3 polygraph tests, one of which was inconclusive, one of which indicated honesty, and one which indicated deception.
Interesting. Were all of them, like, was he asked this, for these polygraphs, was he asked the same question for all of them?
I'm not sure.
Because I want to know if he was asked the same question and in what order. Like, did he fail the first one, inconclusive on the second, and pass the third? Like, what order?
So originally it was like the local police department that was investigating, and they were like, oh, like, you know, you just need to write up these reports.
Mm-hmm.
But when he wrote up these reports, it was inconsistent with what he said and what witnesses said too.
Interesting.
So it was like, but I don't know if it was them or the FBI when they came in that gave him the polygraph.
Okay.
But I remember reading about how Terrence Williams, his mom, and I even think Felipe Santos's family too, were both like, how in depth was this investigation?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
especially when it's investigating a cop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So in this instance, because the main person of this case was a police officer, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and the FBI were called in to work the case. Various investigative techniques were used, including the covert placement of a GPS device on Calkins' vehicle and forensic investigation of the patrol car. Cadaver dogs were used to survey the areas and identified by the GPS, but these turned up no further evidence. Calkins was subsequently fired from the department for providing conflicting information about both missing person cases and for not cooperating with the investigation.
Not gonna lie, shocked that he was fired.
Well, he's never charged.
But still, shocked that they fired him.
Yeah, because they weren't going to charge him, so they had to do something. Despite his dismissal and the parallels between the two disappearances, Culkin has never been charged in connection with either case. Efforts by the families, particularly Terrence Williams' mother, Marcia, have kept the case in the public eye. It took over a decade for her son's story to gain the kind of national attention we tend to see when it's a white, blue-eyed blonde woman that goes missing or is murdered.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 2012 that the story was featured on shows like Dateline and Investigation Discovery series Disappeared. In 2018, so almost 2 decades, the story got the attention of actor, director, and producer Tyler Perry.
Oh.
Perry offered a $200,000 reward for any information leading to the location of the men or an arrest in this case. And 2018 was when he first heard about it.
Wow.
Likely,
And it happened when?
2004, beginning of 2004.
Wow.
Yeah. Al Sharpton, of the National Action Network, and Ben Jealous of the NAACP joined Perry in raising awareness of the case. Tyler Perry released a documentary series titled Never Seen Again in May 2022, which addressed the disappearances of the 2 men, and NPR created a podcast called The Last Ride in 2003 that covers it.
Wow. In 2003?
I'm sorry, 2023.
Okay.
I can't remember if it was once like the story was coming back into light again, was when they realized that something similar had happened to another man.
Oh.
Like it wasn't known in the beginning of
Okay.
the families that there was this connection.
Right.
They had no idea. Despite years of investigation, no trace of either man has ever been found. The case remains open, and many continue to believe that the connection between Culkins and the disappearances holds the key to solving these mysteries.
Yeah.
However, without more evidence, the truth behind what happened to Terrence Williams and Felipe Santos will remain a mystery.
And where's Culkins now?
I want to say somewhere in the Midwest. He's not in Florida anymore.
Oh, so he's still alive.
Yeah. Yeah, because I only read an overview of the podcast from NPR. I didn't listen to it, but they do interview him.
Oh.
They do talk to him.
Okay.
So, and I think they said Ohio or Iowa or something like that.
Okay.
So he left Florida after that. So the Everglades is home to some of Florida's most eerie cryptid legends. So I've got Native American folklore. I've got disappearances. I've got murders. Murder. It's been a while. My ability to stop the intrusive thoughts is, I haven't practiced.
It's just gone.
Yeah. So with the cryptids, I only just kind of briefly go over them because I didn't want to cover everything that happens in the Everglades, or else we're going to run out of things to talk about for Florida.
Well.
Yeah. Maybe not. But still. The 2 I'm going to talk about today are the elusive skunk ape.
Oh, okay.
And the mysterious gatorman.
I've heard of the skunk ape, never of the other one.
All right. The skunk ape, for those of you that don't know, often described as Florida's version of Bigfoot, is said to roam the swamps, standing over 7 feet tall, covered in thick hair, and giving off a foul odor.
Gross.
Witnesses report seeing this creature vanish into the dense wilderness, leaving behind only enormous footprints and a pungent smell. The gatormen, on the other hand, are a blend of human and alligator with scaly skin, powerful jaws, and primal instinct for survival. Said to dwell deep in the Everglades, these hybrid creatures are thought to be the result of dark experiments or ancient folklore come to life.
Ew.
Both legends embody the wild, untamed nature of Florida swamps. So, a little trivia for you.
Okay.
Florida Everglades is home to diverse and very real dangerous wildlife. And we're going to talk about them.
Yes.
Among the most notable are the American alligator and the American crocodile.
The crocodiles had people.
Yes. Both apex predators that thrive in the regions in the wetlands. These reptiles can grow to impressive sizes and are capable of potentially lethal attacks on humans or other animals that stray too close to their territory. Another significant threat comes from the Burmese python.
Ooh, yes.
An invasive species introduced to the Everglades that has wreaked havoc on the local ecosystem. With no natural predators and the ability to grow over 20 feet long, these constrictors prey on native mammals, birds, and even alligators,
God.
drastically reducing biodiversity.
Oh my gosh.
Snakes, such as... I hate you so much right now.
I love snakes.
I
I'm
know.
so excited.
That's why I included these ones, even though they're all scary. Because I just said, go and like it.
I do.
Snakes such as the eastern diamondback rattlesnake and the cottonmouth or water moccasin also inhabit the area. Both are highly venomous and can be aggressive when provoked, posing a serious risk to anyone venturing into their habitat. Why the fuck would you provoke them? The Everglades is also home to Florida panthers, a critically endangered predator. While rare, these big cats are powerful and can be dangerous if they feel threatened or cornered.
Oh, I wouldn't picture panthers in Florida for some reason.
It seems hot.
It just doesn't seem like
Well, I
their
guess they're in
vibe.
jungles. And I feel like the Everglades is very close.
No.
Hockey team for
Florida is called the Florida Panthers.
Hockey in Florida, that's even weirder. In the waters of the Everglades, bull sharks are often found in the brackish water and freshwater canals. Do you know what brackish water is?
Like clear water and salt water. Not clear water.
Fresh.
Fresh water. Thank
Yes.
you. And salt water.
Good job.
Thank you.
Known for their aggressive nature, they are one of the few shark species that can thrive in freshwater environments and pose a danger to swimmers.
Ugh.
Lastly, the region is teeming with mosquitoes that can carry diseases such as West Nile virus, Zika, and dengue fever, making insect protection a necessary for anyone exploring the Everglades.
Joe had this really fun thing when he went up to Massachusetts a couple weeks ago. There are so many mosquitoes that carry some certain disease up there right now that there was a curfew for 8 p.m. that you couldn't be out past the curfew because of how bad the mosquitoes were.
Oh, Lord.
But did Joe go out past the curfew?
Of course he did.
A little bit. And I said, hey, when you're out, why don't you wear bug spray?
No.
Like, just do it. And then he comes back. He's like, I got some bug bites. I said,
You're gonna do
did
it.
you wear your bug spray? Like, did you put any on it? He goes, no.
Of course not.
So we monitored to see if he was going to get any symptoms of it. He was fine.
I'm sure he was.
Because he's over there right now. So, you know.
I had no doubt he would be fine. Monitored his symptoms. Get the fuck out
Monitored 4 symptoms. He didn't have any symptoms. We didn't have to monitor the symptoms. We monitored 4 symptoms.
You should have put on bug spray. You know how nervous she gets.
Thank you. I told you.
You putting on bug spray is more for her than for you.
He always says, I'm not here for a long time. I'm here for a good time. I said, no. When you married me, that means you're here for a long time. We're not doing this any leaving early thing.
No death on my watch. Death will not do us part. Because there'll be no death.
You'll be with me forever.
These animals, while vital to the Everglades ecosystem, create a landscape where caution and respect for nature are crucial to human safety. I'm not done.
Well, you haven't said in conclusion.
It's like my thing.
You know.
So we also have unsolved disappearances of planes.
Oh.
Individuals are not the only ones who have vanished within the Everglades, as there have also been aircraft that have gone missing here as well. One of the most famous cases is that of Flight 19, a training flight of 5 gunman Avenger aircrafts that left Fort Lauderdale Naval Station in 1945 on a routine run, vanished without a trace, giving them the nickname the Lost Patrol. No signs of the planes, nor so much as a scrap of wreckage has ever been found.
See, I always think that is so weird when like nothing has been found.
Yeah. Oddly, the Federal Aviation Administration and the National Transport Safety Board reported that there was no record of an aircraft crash in that area. Also, on our most recent Florida episode, you can hear the story of Eastern Airlines Flight 401 that crashed into the Everglades in December of 1972.
I was going to ask you if that one had crashed there.
Yes. Similarly, Flight ValueJet Flight 592 crashed just 300 yards away from where Flight 401 went down. But this was in May of 1996.
Ew.
And the crash did unfortunately kill all 109 people on board.
Ugh.
Coincidence or? So I saved the best part for last. The Everglades is also rumored to have a ghost ship.
Love a ghost ship. This is such a fun episode for me.
Yeah. No one really knows the age of the story, but by the time it was published in newspapers in 1901, it was said to be more than 300 years old.
Oh my gosh.
The story's origin likely comes from the days when crews of pirates lurked in the bays and rivers of the Florida coast to wait and watch for unsuspecting passing ships. It rhymed.
Oh. Well, down in Tampa, they have a whole like pirate festival.
Well, yeah, it's the Buccaneers, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's like a whole pirate festival.
Yeah, that's like the theme, pirates.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That one I knew. These ships sailed for centuries under the names of captains like William Augustus Bowles, or Billy Bowlegs, Jose Jasper, or Gasparilla.
That's what the thing's called. The pirate party in Tampa.
Gasparilla?
Uh-huh.
That makes sense because he was pirate there.
Yep. That's what it's called.
And Jean Lafayette, which you can also hear about in our Louisiana episode. In the 16th and 17th centuries, they raided Spanish treasure and merchant ships. By the 18th and early 19th century, their targets evolved to slave, merchant, and even fishing vessels. The story of the ghost ship of the Everglades begins with a chase on the high seas near the Florida Keys. Wow, I'm just Susan today. A pirate ship spotted a merchant vessel off in the distance and started their advance on the ship. However, the captain and the sailors of the merchant ship would not be taken easily. They were experienced at their trade and led the pirates on a long chase that continued for hours. As the ships neared Cape Florida, the pirates finally managed to capture their prey and force the merchantmen to surrender. The pirates were furious at the length of the chase and the brave resistance of the gallant crew. As a result, the pirate captain cruelly forced every one of the crew to walk the plank with, quote, fiendish ingenuity, keeping the skipper's wife to watch their fate and that of her brave husband.
Oh my God.
When the last of the crew had been put to death, the captain's wife found herself filled with righteous anger. She fell to her knees and raised her hands above her head, calling upon God to judge and punish her captors for their sinful deeds. Just then, quote, a curling line of foam came sweeping down over the calm expanse and lifting both vessels in its embrace and carried them away. The ships were carried inland atop a giant tidal wave. The story does not share what happened to the merchant vessel, but as for the pirate ship, quote, on the tidal wave bore the pirate ship on its snowy crest. This was written in 1901, so.
Yeah.
Across the sandy shallows, high over the beach above the tallest trees for miles, the great wave carried the pirate until it finally set it down in the center of the great pitiless solitude. 1901 verbiage. The wave eventually faded back to the sea and left the pirates stranded deep in the twisting channels and marshlands of the Florida Everglades.
Because I was wondering, how does a pirate ship sail in 3 feet of water?
The big angry tidal wave
That makes sense how it got there.
that carried it over there.
Yes.
They were unable to find their way out of the labyrinth of water and grass. The pirates died one by one from fever and starvation. But according to the story, they remain there to this day. Even after death, the pirates are left to sail the Everglades as ghosts, doomed to search for a way out of the marshes and swamps forever.
That sucks.
The newspaper article concludes with, quote, now the Indians and hunters in the Everglades tell of seeing the pirate ship with rotting masts and hull and with sails,
Ew.
trying to find a channel out of the sawgrass pools into the deep blue waters of the sea. In conclusion, as we bring this journey through the shadowy waters of the Florida Everglades to a close, it's clear that this land, rich in history and natural beauty, holds mysteries that ripple beneath the surface.
Ooh.
From the dark legends of murderous outlaws like Edgar Watson to eerie tales of unexplained disappearances and unsolved murders, the Everglades remain a place where the line between myth and reality blurs.
Ooh.
And that is the spooky Everglades.
I love when we get all the things in a story.
Oh, we covered it all.
Everything.
I don't think I missed one. I even mentioned serial killer in there.
I know. We got our serial killers. We got our killers, our haunted locations, our ghost ships, our
Cryptids,
our disappearances,
urban legends,
all of it.
maybe some Bermuda Triangle shit happening.
Love it.
Yeah.
All the stuff I love. Oh, and the animals. Love my animals.
And the dangerous, scary animals.
Yeah.
So, myth, truth.
Well, nicely done.
Thank
Very
you.
fun. This was a fun way to kick off spooky season. I know we're a week late, but still.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this makes up for it because we covered a lot of spooky things.
We did.
We cover true spooky things and maybe made up spooky things, unprovable spooky. I keep want to say Scoopy.
All the Scooby things.
Yeah. It's Scoopy, boy. Scoopy.
I mean, Roy was shaking too.
But I keep saying Scoopy instead of spooky.
It's kind of like a mix when people say spoopy.
Spoopy?
Mm-hmm.
That'd probably be better than Scoopy.
I think so. Because at least spoopy makes sense.
Yeah. Well, Everglades, they're real spooky.
Yeah.
That's scary. I definitely think a lot of those, because the 70s too, I feel like was big with organized crime.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be surprised if that was.
It's just so weird how many people died in the most similar, like in the very similar ways.
Yeah, they were all shot.
And then especially when they were like laid across the road, it's like
Yeah.
you're like displaying what you've done.
And like, it's clearly dumped. You didn't get out and try to hide them in the wilderness. You dumped them out of the car
Mhm.
and then you kept going
Yeah.
because they were on the road.
Yeah.
So,
Ugh.
yeah.
Florida.
Florida. I will say though, despite its flaws, every time I've been down to Florida, at least where my mom lives, everyone I interact with is always very nice.
No, they're nice.
Yeah.
It just
There was-
it has a reputation.
There was one car that had all these bumper stickers and it said like Democrats or something with the devil, I think. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And I was in the car with my mom and I was like, man, what I would give to have my friend's car where her license plate is Lucifer. Like, that would just be so fun. Because obviously I saw it way more than I'm used to seeing it up here. And I was like, ugh.
Yeah. We saw it a lot going to the beach.
I roll.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, thanks for tuning in to our spooky season episodes.
number one,
Number 1, we're going to have 4.
we are gonna, it's gonna get increasingly spooky, I think, for you and I.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's spooky for the people too, but the stories you and I are covering are going to scare us as we look into that.
Uh-huh. Oh, I finished my notes, obviously.
Of course you did.
And the whole time I just like was reading one and my face was like this. And I was reading it at work. And my coworker was like, Lauren, are you okay? And I was like, I'm reading about my fear.
Well, tune in next week.
Tune in next week.
By the time you end up finishing this longest episode,
Yeah.
a new one will be out.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. So I guess that's all we have for you. So stay scary.
And stay safe.